You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the NFL with AJL, episode 42. We are live, locked and loaded on a Friday night. You guys could have been anywhere else in the world, but you tapped in with me here on the show. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You already know the platforms are always on as we get the live shows going. Hope y'all have had a blessed week, blessed Friday. Episode 41 was packed. Got a guest in the house for episode 42 tonight. As always, y'all make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Share the stream wherever you might be. Engage with us on all social media and podcast platforms at the NFL with AJL on all platforms. The QR code there in the corner of the screen, of course, will give you every bit of content that you need to stay tapped in with us on the show. We're giving you the verdict on Justin Fields tonight, and I'm giving y'all a heads up. I'm defending this man to the grave, at least for now. The future on Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes' new contract, NFL teams that have surprised us, the Browns running back room, and much more. But like I said, we got a guest on the show tonight. Gonna go ahead and welcome him in. First time on the show, longtime fan of his content, JTSports on all social media platforms, going big on YouTube. What's good, man? Thanks for giving me some time tonight and hopping on the show.
It was good. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to check out on tap.
100%, man. I appreciate you hopping on as always. You guys, if you check the description of the show, wherever you're watching live at JTSports, there might be an underscore there, but I believe he's got a link tree. All social platforms, all podcast platforms, just like you can find the show here. Let's get him to 15,000 subs on the YouTube channel. Let's get me to 600 subs on the channel tonight for the live. And let's not waste any more time, man. We're going to go ahead and hop right in as Patrick Mahomes finally gets his, I guess, leveling moment of the NFL as we see the Joe Burrows and the Jalen Hurtses and all the other quarterbacks this season become the highest paid for like a split second. And we talked about Patrick Mahomes' payday coming up. Well, now he gets to $210.6 million between this year and 2026. It's all completely guaranteed. Of course, the most ever guaranteed for what I think is already a top 6 quarterback in NFL history. It's now the second highest paid per year, $52.65 million, about $150,000 more a year than Justin Herbert, but about $2.35 million a year behind Joe Burrow. So he's comfortably in that 2 spot, man. And I'm sure you know, JT, of course, he's really the only quarterback who deserves this money. But considering Kansas City really is like true lack of weapons, and I guess the expectations of Kansas City this year, do you think this magnitude of a contract was necessarily wise with where they're at right now offensively in the season?
Absolutely. Patrick Mahomes is the kind of players that you don't, the amount of money that you're giving him, because he's one of those players you can go to, and it's like if you need him to take a big time free agent, he has no thing with Travis Kelce, Patrick. And back when they gave him the big mega deal years ago, that came out and said that, like, of course, he's eventually going to end up paid quarterback forever, with the way that the quarterback market works. It's just that whenever Patrick Mahomes said, I want to become the highest paid, let's go ahead and do this. Of course, Kansas City was going to do it. Anytime Mahomes a pay cut, he's going to do it. So with Patrick Mahomes, he's the kind of player that you don't really have to worry about him, the kind of contract and all the money that he's given. Unlike Deshaun Watson, you can trust Patrick Mahomes. It's up in the big moments of the games when it matters. Even against the Detroit Lions, I picked Kansas. I wasn't shocked that Detroit won, but I said just because Kansas City is without Chris Jones and try off to count out Patrick Mahomes, they still got a pretty decent offensive line. Not the offensive line was garbage, I would have tuned, but you can never count out Patrick Mahomes. I counted him out before years ago, and I greatly to continue to not count him out again.
Yeah, 100%. You said it very well. You can never count him out. It's like when we've bet on Tom Brady in the past. You're always safe, usually safe, to bet on Patrick Mahomes, bet on Big Red, bet on that offensive output of the Kansas City Chiefs. And basically, when you look at it here with the Chiefs, they moved up his money to really compensate, of course, the NFL's best player right now. We know 2 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, the MVPs that he's got under his belt as well. We know he signed the 10-year, $450 million deal, obviously back in, I believe, 2020 it was, really before he got on the pedestal and obviously on the trajectory that we saw. The only reason I really asked the question of the contract being wise is we saw when Travis Kelce wasn't there. And yes, I understand it was week 1, but the Rashee Rices of the world and the Kadarius Tonys who did bounce back in week 2, talking about Kadarius Toney. Obviously, you've got Sky Moore, who also had a bounce back game as well. But I feel like we're now going to be looking at the Kansas City Chiefs possibly as how much can they continue to have it just be the Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes show? Of course, now it's mainly Travis Kelce with Tyreek Hill out of the building, Mecole Hardman out of the building. But we see these NFL teams get comfortable, right? Like we saw the Bills be very Josh Allen dependent. Yeah, go ahead.
You see what the Rams are doing right now with Puka Nacua?
Uh-huh.
You want to know why they're able to do that despite not having the most talented roster, having Cooper Kupp out? Yeah, and Matthew Stafford are the key call. A great head coach. Everybody else, they kind of can be plug and play. You see, Patriots way, I don't truly the Patriots way. I think the Patriots way was Tom Brady. You see, consistent about was Tom Brady. Everything else changed. Nothing else stayed the same.
Everything else flowed.
So with Tom Brady was winning Super Bowls with dudes like Chris Hogan. You know where that fool Chris Hogan is at, right? He's playing professional lacrosse. So when you look at Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes stays healthy, it doesn't really matter who they have at receiver and tight end. Now, they be able to win a year being, having a lack of weapons? Maybe not every single season.
Right, and that's the expectations I talk about there.
You do have to have, a good enough team to be able to compete with, some of the other tyrants. But as long as you got Mahomes and Andy Reid and you got a decent enough supporting cast around them in a good offensive line, the year where Kansas City shouldn't be viewed as a contender, you can trust Patrick Mahomes because he's all big moments more times than not, and he's mature. He doesn't get into anything off the field that's probably I don't really think anybody should be worried about Mahomes in this contract. I trust my 5 quarterback of all time pretty much. So it's like, hey, he's good to be a model citizen and actually being able to be dependable.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I second everything that you said there. Of course, Mahomes, he's one of the best, right? We can always trust him. So it's kind of like, does he really have a price tag? We see Shannon Sharp on Nightcap with Uncle Nocho talking about Mahomes is still underpaid at $210.6 million guaranteed over a 4-year span. It's not even so much as like being worried with his money because we know he's worth it. Open the segment saying, of course, he's really like the only player. I said it back in 2020 when he signed a decade, damn near $500 million deal, $45 million a year. He was the only quarterback that deserved that because of what he did fresh off the 50 touchdown, I think 5,000 yard season, or just, a year or two after that. Of course, he won the MVP that year. I think wins the Super Bowl the next year. Yeah, go ahead.
If Mahomes wasn't a bit like, man, Deshaun's getting $230 million fully guaranteed. I need that.
Let me get that $300.
You feel me? But it's like he's getting $210 million, and Joe Burrow, I think he got way more guaranteed, I believe. So it's like, even though he's still the highest paid, he's still kind of like in certain regards when it comes to true guarantees, but it doesn't matter because he's like, man, fuck that. With me winning championships, I'm going to get all that back in advertisement, sponsors and whatnot. So at the end of the day, it's like when you win, the money still gets to you. It doesn't have to always be because, you just got to get it all from the NFL team and sacrifice. You look at Justin Herbert, like people kind of don't realize how he truly is because he's Patrick Mahomes, and this is why we have these Tua versus Justin Herbert arguments every single week because it's like we know Justin Herbert's more talented, but he's getting all this money, he's not winning. He has a bad head coach, and it's like Justin Herbert would never get that. Exactly. So with Patrick Mahomes, him being able to still find a way to take less to help out Kansas City is to allow Kansas City to the force that they have been for half the last decade.
Yeah, see, and that last point you made there is exactly what I'm kind of like leaning into here. Is we've seen teams be Aaron Rodgers dependent in the past. We've seen teams like outside of the Saints not having a wide receiver one, in Drew Brees' later years kind of being Drew Brees dependent. We've seen Josh Allen. We've even had some of the instances of being Patrick Mahomes dependent. We know he can spread the ball around. He's already got both games this year, 11 different completions to 11 different receivers. But that's where I start to wonder, because this is kind of, this can kind of segue us into the next part here of why I really asked it. So we saw Tyreek Hill leave 2 seasons ago when it came down to it under Mahomes' 10-year, $450 million deal. Now Tyreek got on a podcast and said, I just wanted to get to 25 M's. I think he wanted to kind of close to match Devontae Adams, if I'm not mistaken. He said Kansas City got him to 25, but I want to say, obviously, the Dolphins gave him 30, and then it was something to do, I think, with guaranteed money. I believe it was guaranteed money or possibly a signing bonus. Not necessarily sure, but I said it when Patrick Mahomes got signed. Look, if it comes down to Kelsey and the Cheetah's gone, because I believe Kelsey has firmly cemented his place there. It felt like, and clearly, it felt like when he left, damn, here goes this offense, but he leaves, Super Bowl MVP, clearly Super Bowl champion, and they're looking for the repeat, So, now that we get into it necessarily, again, we saw Tyreek Hill leave a couple seasons ago. Do you possibly see any other departing Kansas City players now with Patrick Mahomes making the most ever guaranteed over a 4-year stretch?
Not
whether
really.
Offense or defense.
No, I don't think it'll be Chris Jones. It seems like he is trying to get a pretty big. I don't really think like they're going to cash him out. I think they will be able to come to. I don't really think he truly wants to leave Kansas City. I don't think Kansas City is willing to let him leave, because it's elite pass rushing defensive tackles. That's why guys like Jalen Carter go so high.
Yep.
Chris Jones is pretty much Kelsey. He's on the same mindset that Mahomes is. He's not trying to get so much money to the point where he straps the team, and plus he makes that all back in endorsement to himself. So I think Kansas City has a team where Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, these are guys who may be willing to take a little bit, maybe a piece, somebody like Jones, but even then, you can't keep everybody in the league. Sometimes you're just going to have to let certain players walk valuable. And even then, it's like, even though Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are more valuable, it's like, that's still not a player I'm trying to bet on. Just saying, we can replace.
They signed him after week 1. They clearly needed him badly.
And you saw what he did.
Yep. Comes out the gate, 1.5 sacks. First game back, contributing immediately. But no, I mean, you talk about Chris Jones, I think with him being on that 1-year deal, because I believe deals speak everything about a team's actual intentions to a player. Obviously, how much money you're paying me, how much do you value my talent? And obviously, if you don't pay me what I want, we'll have a conversation. And if not, I'll walk into the free agent market, like we clearly saw with Tyreek Hill and how it happens in every, NFL offseason. But not only the amount, but the length of the deal. How much is guaranteed? How is it necessarily structured? Because if you go look at Chris Jones's new deal that he signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, it's the same one he was already on. It's just got about $1 million, I think, or $2 million more in incentives, but he has to be first team All-Pro. He has to be possible defensive player of the year, or I think in the voting. The Chiefs have to make the Super Bowl, and I think win the Super Bowl just for him to exercise an extra $2 million in his contract. So I'm going to be on the opposite end, man. I think possibly after this year, the Chiefs will have a decision to make with Chris Jones, and whether that's possibly leaning more into George Karlaftis, that they've drafted in the most recent years, and he's produced as a rookie, looks very promising. I think he can be kind of a future star of that team. I can see Chris Jones possibly leaving when you bring him back on a 1-year deal, when it's very incentive laden, and you sign him after week 1. I think that puts all the leverage in Chris Jones's court, and maybe Chris Jones has enough leverage, right, to possibly get that deal that he wants with the Chiefs, because we heard he wanted somewhere in between, I think, Watt and Donald money, considering what he had done. And we know the numbers and the accolades of Chris Jones. There's no reason to go over that. We understand the type of player that he is. Couple more that I'd like to throw on there, though, before we get into Kareem Hunt, the Browns, and the running back room. Creed Humphrey, very, very valuable center for this team. Very, very good pick that has come their way within the last couple of NFL drafts. And I really think one of the better ones out there. He fills in for some offensive linemen that have got out of town, being a great rookie overall. with his possible payday coming up, and I could see Creed staying because we saw the Super Bowl against the Bucs, obviously with the Chiefs, where Mahomes literally ran 500 yards just away from defensive pressure, gets blown out. Tom Brady wins the seventh one. We hold to know the whole story. So I'd like to think that Creed would stay. But speaking of George Karlaftis as well, like if it came down to a decision, we know Karlaftis' payday is not up yet. He'll be having a fifth-year option come up because I believe he was a first-rounder. Only first-rounders get that fifth-year option. But just some of these, key pieces that are on this team here that I'm like, hey, Mahomes is making now $53 million a year each year over the next 4 guaranteed. So no matter how you guys perform, like Mahomes is going to take up that 20-25% that he's got on the salary cap. But y'all get in the chat, get in the comments, let us know what you think about Patrick Mahomes' new record-breaking deal. He's obviously second most now in the league in terms of paid per year, the most guaranteed money over a 4-year span. Now let's get into Kareem Hunt. I guess not re-signing with the Browns, but staying with the Browns after shopping around with the Colts, with the Saints. We heard of some other teams that were out there looking for him. So he is now with the Browns after Nick Chubb's injury, of course. There's no Nick Chubb. Jerome Ford really did hold it down in week 2, which is very surprising. I said, on the show earlier this week, really his best Nick Chubb impression, damn near getting that 80-yard run, I believe it was, stretching out in the Steelers game. But, do you think this running back by committee now in Cleveland, considering it was really the Nick Chubb show, and obviously there was a little mix in of, Kareem Hunt a couple seasons ago and really over the last few seasons, do you think the new committee now of Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt is going to be enough to supplement to, I guess, just fill in for what they lost in the presence of Nick Chubb?
I really don't think it's going to be a committee. Jerome Ford is the legitimate lead back. I thought he was good enough to be came out of the 2022 NFL draft with Brees Hall and Kenneth Good as those guys. He transferred from Alabama, balled out Cincinnati. He doesn't have blazing speed, but he has an incredible vision, and you definitely saw that on display. And the Browns lost against Pittsburgh. I mean, the dude has a really good front. Now, it does help that he's, rushing behind one of the best offensive lines in the Cleveland Browns have an eye for really good running backs. And when you look at the way that Kevin's team is set up, he does a lot of innovative things in the run game. So when you're a running back in the South Shanahan's or Kevin Stefanski, you kind of get a little bit of a stat inflation. Air raid offense works in college football. If you're running the air raid offense, your quarterback is going to put up a lot of numbers. Jerome Ford contact, I really like his contact balance as well. I think he most likely of the snaps. And you got to remember that this was always the plan. Now, they didn't plan on Nick. Nobody expected that. You drafted Jerome Ford.
Hope his career is still good.
Yeah, like, too, you feel me? That was a real look for Mika Fitzpatrick. But when you look at Jerome Ford pick, Kareem Hunt was already, because remember, him and the Browns were kind of at odds with, he wanted a new deal before the season. The Browns play, fuck you. You get what I'm saying? And then we'll talk about it after the season. And then after the season, he walks to re-sign him because, like, this step, he's not the same player that he once was. Well, I mean, Jerome Ford is good second back because regardless, Jerome Ford isn't going to get all the carries. The Browns were even giving Jerome exactly. So with Kareem, he's still going to get work. I think the Browns just bought him. Why? There wasn't really nobody else in the running back market who really was as good as Kareem Hunt. And even though Klein, he already knows the system, so you can pretty much just plug and play him.
Comfortability.
Immediately.
Familiarity.
Yeah, with the Browns, it's like the run game is always going to be there for them. It may not be in to see who has a really good front, who matches up well with them up front.
Yeah, they do.
But the Browns are one of the scheme and Kevin Stefanski's run game and all of the innovative things that he likes to do. Jerome Ford, I probably would pick him up on all of my fantasy leagues. If you play fantasy football, I've been high on him.
Man, I tried to snag him already. I told my buddy, let me have him. I'm like, let me get Jerome Ford. I done asked the commissioner of the league twice.
I had a weird.
He's like, nah, I'm going.
Suspicion to Nick Chubb this year. So I just picked him up. But even before that, I was like, he's still going to get some workload regardless. But Nick, I started getting all these trade offers. I was like, get away. Like, I drafted this dude for a reason.
Right. Jerome Ford possibly going to finish like top, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 in fantasy. I'm a casual in fantasy, I won't lie. Like, I know a little bit about it, but I'm not deep in there. Like, being here on the show with guys like you and really chopping up the game is.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's good enough that he possibly could go for over 1,000 this year. So let's say he gets 1,200 and he's averaging a high 4.5, 5 yards per carry.
Yeah.
What happens with Nick Chubb coming back from the injury? How do you running backs are really expendable? So let's say Nick Chubb comes back from that injury and he struggles.
Right. The last time Nick Chubb put his John Hancock on an NFL contract, signing it for a new deal, like the running back position was viewed way differently. We hear every time Christian McCaffrey takes a snap, they're like, oh, how are the Niners going to address this? Highest paid running back, this, that, and the third. I hate to say it, man. Of course, I hope Chubb comes back, but I'm going to be real shocked if he's willing to step back on a football field after basically 8 years apart, having the same devastating injury to the exact same leg as well. But I think when it comes down to the running back committee and just overall, or not running back committee, the running back room, how running backs are viewed, if Nick Chubb is struggling, I think him and the Browns could have a good enough conversation to really decide where they need to go next with his contract. You could see a Jerome Ford plug in. You could see a Kareem Hunt, still get back in there again. I think Nick Chubb would more than likely retire a Brown before he would leave, but you never know. We thought Brady would be a Patriot forever. We thought Russ would be a Seahawk forever. We thought Stafford would be a Lion forever. So those types of things have really switched up, what's kind of happened here lately in the NFL. But I do think it'll be enough, whether it's just Jerome Ford or whether it's Kareem Hunt as well. You said it perfectly. Kareem Hunt's got the familiarity to be with this team. He's been with them for the past 4 years, ever since being the league leading rusher with Kansas City, and then having some of those, off-field instances to where Kansas City got rid of him, unfortunately for him. But hey, he did what he did. And obviously, Big Red in the NFL had to enact their discipline. But whether it is, all Jerome Ford, or whether it's Ford and, Hunt, kind of like a running back committee there, Cleveland's O-line is definitely great enough to support them, between the two. Jedrick Willis, we have Joel Bitonio, obviously Ethan Pokic, I believe is how you say it. Wyatt Teller, DeJuan Jones getting some time as well. He was, a first round grade on my board when I was coming into the NFL draft. Thought he was a great lineman there. So I do think that it will be enough. Now, of course, we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson later in the show. He's got to be a lot better. Stefanski's had a fall off over the last couple of years, so it's going to be an adjustment for everybody. Like, how's Deshaun Watson going to feel not knowing that Chubb is behind him? How is Kevin Stefanski going to possibly adjust? How is the OC going to possibly adjust? I think it'll be enough of a supplement, but of course it's going to be a tail off, and we'll probably more than likely, that's why I say, enough of a supplement, we'll probably more than likely see a fall off in that run game, because nobody can really fill in for Nick Chubb. And, when Chubb was there and Kareem Hunt was also backing it up, like, not we, but a lot of people in the league were like, is this the best running back tandem in the NFL? And you had a great argument for it, But let's get all the way crazy, right? Because the Browns love to get crazy with how they throw quarterback contracts at, people that haven't played in a year and have over 15 or 20 off-field allegations. Let's just say, fuck it, man. Should the Cleveland Browns call Jonathan Taylor, considering the expectations they have for this year?
You can't call Jonathan Taylor. It wouldn't make Jonathan Taylor, because if you're trading for Jonathan Taylor, you already have to make sure that you already have a deal. We're seeking a new deal. So it wouldn't make sense for them to trade for him when Deshaun Watson is taking up so much of the cap. It's like running back is a position where it's easily don't need it to win a Super Bowl. And the Browns have such a great scheme that you don't need Jonathan Taylor, how effective your scheme is. Like, Nick Chubb is a really good back, but off because Jerome Ford is really that guy. Like, he has very good vision. He's kind of like of Nick Chubb in his own right, but a little bit better when it comes to being a force in the pass game as well. I really have a lot of confidence in Jerome Ford moving forward. Like, he's been the talk of training camp. He had a pretty, though we didn't see him, but from what was coming out of training camp, like, this has always been the plan for Jerome being like the lead back. When they drafted him, they probably didn't envision that. because I don't think anybody agrees down the road, but I do think that they view Jerome Ford as a potential RB1 franchise change, really good running back. Like, if he can get like 25 carries a game, the same workload, Chubb would be surprised if he gets to 1,100, 1,200 yards. He's that good of a back.
Yeah, definitely think
this isn't the first time Nick Chubb got hurt, because remember on Thursday Night Football, when Ernest Johnson had a coming out party, and he was really good, and he was coming from the NFL or the XFL, I believe it was. So the Browns scheme is like, it's just like the Ravens with that running back. It didn't matter. A couple years ago, like, they had a backfield with the Devontae Freeman, and you talk about if this was 2015, a nostalgia trip to the past, and Devontae Freeman was looking for elite run scheme. You can pretty much plug and play anybody. Now, of course, Jonathan Taylor, if they could trade for Jonathan Taylor and, they had the cap space to pay him, because they already got a complete team and most of their best players are locked up, but with their cap situation track, like, I think you're better suited just sticking with Jerome Ford. Like, you get a good running back on a really cheap. The Jonathan Taylor kind of would forbid you from improving other positions if you need to address those injury at cornerback. Let's say they go down 1-2 cornerbacks. You need to be able to have money to sign somebody for someone.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel you there for sure. And it is a big swing, right? But I'm like, hey, the Browns' most desperate move from a desperate franchise on a quarterback that was kind of desperate to get dealt from the Texans and clearly just get back into the league, especially with him, being off the field for about a year. But, the thing here with Jonathan Taylor, we know if he came over, he would be a big addition. It would be on a 1-year deal. He's more than likely not going to be with the Colts anyway, right? But wouldn't it be crazy? They bring him in. We get news possibly throughout the NFL year that Nick Chubb might be out for more than a year, or maybe he's contemplating retirement. What if Jonathan Taylor was kind of able to be that duplicate of Nick Chubb in a way, just plug him right in? Now, yes, he's coming off of an injured year as well, so it would be, risky, I guess, considering, hey, your star running back who you've got a lot of money allotted to just got hurt. Your star quarterback, or at least who's supposed to be a star quarterback's not performing, and now you're going to go and allocate money to a guy who wants to be paid near the tops of the league. But could you just imagine for a second if that seamless transition was able to slide in there, and ultimately the Browns kind of had just a switch off? Again, it'd be a big swing. It'd be a lot of money because I already got a lot of money going towards the cap with Deshaun Watson, like we mentioned. And, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But, maybe they think that this can happen to supplement their best player who just went out and obviously still does have high hopes, talking about this team still having high hopes for the year. But like I just said, Jonathan Taylor wants that big money, and the Browns already have Deshaun Watson playing horribly with the $230 million guaranteed. I saw your video on YouTube early this morning, man. The Browns need a refund. Deshaun Watson is scamming the Browns right now. We're going to get into it in a couple of segments, but yeah, definitely interesting to see here how Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt are gonna shake things out. I love that you picked Jerome Ford up in fantasy as well. I love that you know some of those backstories on him to know that that's why he was drafted. He is pretty Nick Chubb-esque, and I even said it on the show Tuesday, like, hey, he damn sure gave his best Nick Chubb impression, coming in shortly after Nick Chubb got hurt. So you got to respect ultimately, what he was doing in that time. All right, JT, we're getting to a point in the show. Go ahead.
It would be really hard for them to pull off of Jonathan Taylor. Got $37 million cap space right now because they didn't have to pay Deshaun Watson. Yeah. Next year, NFL and available salary cap, they're going to be minus 45 mil under the cap. It's like they're going to have to ask some serious questions about what are going to be some of their key players. They're going to have to over the cap.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Cap space is everything. Cap space is everything in this league, but also we know good enough GM, front office, they know how to manipulate it, move it around. Like, we heard one time Brady basically signed a deal either with the Pats or the Bucks that basically took him like off of payroll because it was all incentive laden. He didn't really care about a signing bonus or a roster bonus or a workout bonus. Like, Brady had his money, right? Brady was married to a chick who made $100 million a year, made more than he did a year. And he was, the best player in the league, winning his MVPs, being in one of the most, highly renowned sports leagues out there. But all right, JT, we're about to get into a point in the show that has been a very sensitive topic, especially for Chicago Bears fans. We saw the Chicago Bears in 2021 trade up, steal the NFL draft, in my opinion. I remember talking about it on the show I was on at the time. They take him 11th overall, and now Justin Fields, of course. It's coming down to a decision time, basically. And now we're walking into, JT and I here on the show, guys, episode 42, the verdict on Justin Fields. And I've got a hell of a defense case laid out for him. I almost wanted to get my gavel so I could declare my case closed, maybe get a little suit and tie going on, a little fedora, I don't know, to let you guys know that I'm out here defending this guy, okay? Call it Lewis and Defenses LLC, whatever you guys want to throw it out there as the defense that I'm about to give for Justin Fields. I'll let you take the floor first, but I just want to put some of the bad things out there, some of the numbers that are floating around about Justin Fields, right? So the Bears have had Justin Fields start 27 games so far in the NFL. He's 5-22 in those games, 5 wins, 22 losses. He's been sacked 101 times. His completion percentage is 59.8. He's thrown 26 touchdowns to 24 interceptions. He's fumbled 31 times, lost 8 of those fumbles, and he's averaging just 156.5 passing yards per game in his career. Got a little bit more before we get into the actual topics of it, just so we can get kind of the consensus of Justin Fields before we do for me, or maybe don't for you, JT, jump into the defense and the verdict of him. He leads the NFL since joining the league with sacks of being in the pocket 4 seconds or longer. He holds the ball the second longest behind Zach Wilson since entering the league at just over 3 seconds. I think Zach is like 3.04, 3.03. Fields is like 3.01, 3.02. So basically the worst in the league at holding the football in the pocket. His fourth quarter passer rating is 61.9, the lowest of his passer rating over the 4 quarters of his total career. His first half / his scripted plays and even his first quarter passer rating is the second lowest out of his passer ratings with the quarters he's played. His passer rating when leading in a game is 62. He's thrown 2 touchdowns to 7 interceptions when he's leading in a game. And just some of the names that you can think of, right? Like, oh, wow, Mac Jones has a great passer rating when leading, and Baker Mayfield has a great passer rating when leading. Well, how do they get those leads, really? Look at the coaching for Mac Jones with Bill Belichick, the defense, the culture that he landed in. Baker Mayfield didn't land in the best spot, but he was eventually given the best running back tandem. OBJ, who he didn't use, the tight end room, the O-line, the defense, the front 7. Kevin Stefanski comes in, wins Coach of the Year. So that's kind of all the bad shit out there for Justin Fields, right? But let's start off with our defense, or I guess slamming case of Justin Fields here, JT. With this loaded 2024 quarterback class, how much pressure is on the Chicago Bears to make a decision on Justin Fields? Whether you want to do a scale of 1 to 10, fire off the hook. Defense case for you starts now.
Man, I think 0, man. I don't think there's no pressure on Justin Fields, because it's like, if Justin Fields is ass this year, guess what? They get a top 5 pick, Caleb Williams. So that's a blessing in disguise. Caleb Williams with DJ Moore? Are you crazy? Justin Fields has produced this year. Now, if he doesn't play, he'll still be a starting quarterback to take a chance on that just because of the raw athleticism. And you see, I love Justin Fields. This is my favorite player in the league, but I don't have any more excuses to make for him.
I wonder why you had him on your thumbnails for every live. I see him and Caleb Williams. I'm like, he likes him. I like it.
Yeah, Fields, but I'm at the point now that I was with Jameis Winston, because Jameis Winston was my favorite player too. But Deuce, you feel me? And when he was, unfortunately, he got injured. Justin Fields is like, I can't really make noise. Still kind of has the same issues that he had in college. He holds on to the ball too long. You reference how him and Zach Wilson, any other quarterback in the league. Well,
that's wild to me, right?
People on people on ESPN is for Justin Fields, and people aren't realizing that. All people do is look at the box. Sack 6 times, offensive line stinks. No, if you go back and you watch that game, 3 out of 6 of those sacks were on Justin Fields. Again, 2 of those sacks came when he ran right into pressure. It was a third down where was getting into him. The pocket was collapsing, and instead of running outside the pocket and choose that way, he decides to step up and try to run from inside of the pocket. He tried to step up and then try the middle, and it wasn't even there. He ran right into a sack. Now,
and Justin Fields wasn't a runner in college. That's what people forget. Like, he can move around, but he diced you out from the pocket.
Exactly. He had such elite level offensive line play and receivers that it allowed shit from throwing the football from inside the pocket. Plus, when you're just so much more talented, what's good, Jay? So much more talented as a team, like your quarterback doesn't really get put in situation. You get to see what they can do when everything isn't working. Like CJ Stroud, the reason why so tremendously was because he showed against Georgia when everything's not working, he can still improve in Fields. We know that, but you still have to be able to win from within the pocket, and we've yet to really see him take. So I do think that Justin Fields, I don't really think there's too many excuses you can continue when he completely missed DJ Moore, who was open on that that flat route. That was some Mitch Trubisky shit. How many times did we
got
see
DJ Moore throwing his hands up in the second game of the season?
Clapping. People love Justin Fields, but a large reason why people defend him so hard is because of the put in place for him potentially winning the MVP. But here's crazy. The problem.
I love him, but not that much.
Yeah, like he never earned those expectations.
Right.
You feel me?
Right.
It just are assuming that Justin Fields is going to make it all work, but he wasn't really that great last year. He was great because of what he was doing from a fantasy to
in his legs. Did I lose you? I might have lost you, JT. Froze up on my end. We'll drop you out and pop you back in. You still with me, man? I might have lost you. I'll pick up where you were leaving. Okay, he dropped out. We'll get him back in a second. I'm sure he'll drop in. JT was saying there, though, with the loaded 2024 quarterback class, how much pressure is on Chicago to make a decision on Justin Fields? And I think there's more pressure than ever on the Chicago Bears, specifically the Chicago Bears, to make a decision with Justin Fields, because this is the best quarterback prospect class since, ironically, ding, 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 Justin Fields is in 2021, when we saw Trevor Lawrence go number 1 overall, when we see Zach Wilson, when we obviously see Trey Lance, who mistakenly went at number 3. We see Mac Jones. We see Justin Fields go out in this NFL draft. So this is one of the most loaded NFL drafts that we've seen in terms of the quarterback position in a very long time. JT, I'll let you pick back up on your point. I was just kind of talking about how I do think the pressure is on Chicago, but I want to let you finish your statement there before you dropped out.
Yeah, it's like with the Chicago Bears, it's like the pressure really is on the coach and staff. You feel me? Flus is going to be gone after this year. But when it comes to the general manager, Ryan Pace's job of building this team, assembling a really solid roster, they still got some questions on the offensive line, solid group. I think that, not enough people are giving Justin Fields a fair amount of, and it seemed like he's just in a compromising situation. Like, it's a little bit of both. The coaching hasn't been, the play calling got to be better. It's like Justin Fields never threw the ball more than 30 times last season. In all the games that he started, the most he threw the ball was 28 times. This season, 37 and 29 times. Those are nearly career highs for passing attempts for him. And he's not a passer, like 4 times against the Bucs and 9 times against the Green Bay Packers. So the Chicago Bears, I know you heard about how he called out the coaching somewhat in his
for his robotic play.
It's like he kind of had a point with that. It's like, man, like I'm just Fields, like, let me do what I mean. He said that sometimes he gets a little bit overloaded with the information. That means that
you can overcoach a player.
Exactly. That's why he said that he kind of feels robotic and he kind of overthinks.
He said he was just going to say, F it, get out of his head, start playing football, doing what he knows best. And it's like, in the NFL, when you first hear that, you're like, huh? But then you're like, when you're in the league, you can't study on game day. You can't watch tape on game day. You're not going over in-depth practice stuff and walkthroughs and, offensive installs, defensive schemes on game day. You have to know that. So when you show up on game day, you're studied, you prepared, you don't have to think. because the ball snaps and within your first 2 reads, oh, that's cover 2. That's a single. So like you're pointing that stuff out. And I think that's the point that Justin Fields needs to get to. This is going to be a great segment. We got the viewers coming in as well. So let's really ramp it up. But I do think that the pressure in terms of the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields, I think it's on the Bears more than ever. I was saying it before you jump back into the link on the show. This is the best quarterback prospect class since Justin Fields came in 2021 with a Mac Jones, with a Trevor Lawrence, with a Zach Wilson, with a Trey Lance. And in my opinion, Justin Fields was by far and away the number 2 quarterback prospect in that class. Not Zach Wilson, who threw 50-50 balls. Not Mac Jones, who I wasn't really a fan of coming out of Alabama. Yeah, he was a winner, but we've seen the quarterbacks that had come out of Alabama. I give that exception to Tua and to Jalen and to maybe Bryce Young if he can stay healthy. We saw with Trey Lance, who was very raw. I call Anthony Richardson Trey Lance 2.0, but it seems like Anthony Richardson, with just 13 college games played under the tutelage of Shane Steichen, is clearly an amazing player, or so we hope so he can stay healthy as well. And we know that Justin Fields has shown nothing as a player this far to warrant a 5th-year option being picked up by the Chicago Bears. But if you're looking at Chicago as a coaching staff, which I'm absolutely about to obliterate when we get into who do you blame for this, the coaching staff has all the pressure on them to actually get it right. And I went through some offensive and defensive ranks, previous head coaches, what they actually did in their tenure there. So let's get to the real question of the blame game. Who are you blaming for this? Justin Fields, the coaching, or both?
Man, I got to blame both just because I do think that really gotten really that better as a quarterback. He's still holding on to the ball too long. He's receivers. I mean, bro, you got DJ Moore clapping his hands. I mean, like, what were we complaining about? All the fuck was Justin Fields throwing to? We get you a receiver, and you're not going to throw him the ball. It's like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I love Justin Fields, but I'm running out of excuse. Kind of got to start calling it what it is. It's like let's just call it what it is. It's both. Like, he has, and he kind of has regressed in the coaching staff. It's like they're trying to make him become something he's not. This is the exact same. The Redskins at the time tried to do an RG3, albeit RG3 wanted to be a pocket passer, but it's like, somebody made a really good point. I think it was Colin Cowherd, like these black quarterbacks, and he didn't say black this about race, but it kind of is an overarching thing. You'll have a black quarterback who gets paid, and all of a sudden the passer, bro, like these quarterbacks got to stop making it seem like you can only win games one way. Play your way. That's what got you to this point. Now the Bears, they got to let him play his game. Yes, but it's like, I already think anyway. So regardless how this plays out, like I really think like the Bears are probably down to a decision where are you going to give Justin Fields his 3rd head coach, or are you going to let Matt Eberflus quarterback in? Before I finish, I just want to say, like, you might as well let Matt Eberflus his own quarterback if this doesn't work out, because at this point Justin Fields would be on his 3rd head coach, and what his quarterbacks that have to overcome multiple coaching changes don't work out. Recently, Marcus Mariota had a new offensive coordinator nearly every single year he was at Tennessee. Head coaches. So it's like you put Justin Fields in the 3rd head coaching situation, or you get a new system. Now you're giving him another playbook that he has to learn. I think it's best if they just grade him for like a 3rd, 4th round pick and let Matt Eberflus and his staff pick their quarterback. And I think it would be good for Justin Fields too.
Because if another coach comes in, you would be talking about technically his 4th head coach, Ohio State, Nagy, Eberflus, ABC coach. His 4th coach in his 4th offensive system, in his 4th offensive coordinator, more than likely. But here's where the defense case comes in. Got the blazer on, ties all tightened up. I don't have a gavel, but damn, I wish I did, because I am coming to the defense of Justin Fields right here, right now. If we're talking about the blame, most of the blame is on the coaching. Of course, when Justin Fields is holding the ball like that, when he's fumbling like that, that's on quarterbacks, right? Like, we have to give some of the blame to Justin Fields, but probably 90% of this blame for me is going to coaching and everything that's coming after I start this soliloquy right here. So let's look at the coaches that Justin Fields has now and who he did have. So he's got Matt Eberflus, who's won 13 out of his 19 games as a head coach, but who has accomplished the 23rd overall offense in points and the 27th overall offense in yards. He had the worst defense and the worst record in the league last year. Newsflash, he's on pace for the worst defense and the worst record again this year for a possible top pick, just like you said with Caleb Williams coming in. And with the defensive coordinator resigning, y'all know now he's about to start calling defensive plays, right? So that's more time away from the made head coaching duties that he's actually got. Matt Nagy was here before Matt Eberflus. Matt Nagy was 34-31 as a head coach, had the offense in an okay position in his first year. Of course, we know the story, right, is that he gets out of there because he really didn't know between Mitch Trubisky, kind of Andy Dalton, what was happening with Justin Fields. He couldn't really decide on a quarterback to actually implement into this system once the Bears jumped up and, got Justin Fields in the first round with the trade and got him number 11 overall. But of course, the offense after the first year was okay. It declined each year after that. Even though Matt Nagy only had a losing season one time, he went 12-4 in the playoffs, 8-8 missed the playoffs, 8-8 made the playoffs again, lost to my Saints, and then he goes 6-11 and gets fired. But he achieved the 22nd best offense in yards, which was better than Eberflus right now. No, yes, Matt had a full 4 years. Eberflus is, 19 games in, like I said. But Matt Nagy achieved the 22nd best offense in yards and also the 22nd best offense in points and the 25th best offense in yards. And the defense under Matt Nagy was damn sure better than a defensive-minded head coach and a former defensive coordinator from the Indianapolis Colts in Matt Eberflus. Matt Nagy had the 10th best defense. In his tenure, over the 4 years, his defense ranked 10th overall on an average in points per game, even lower in 7th in yards per game. And he had a mix of 3 defensive coordinators, Vic Fangio, Chuck Pagano, Sean Desai. Let alone the whole team. People were getting mixed up, thrown in, thrown out. He got them to the playoffs twice, and he was literally an Andy Pinero double doink against the Philadelphia Eagles away from going to play my New Orleans Saints in the in the divisional round the year that the no call happens, in the game before the no call happens, against my Saints. He loses to the Saints in the wild card year and in the second straight year of Matt Nagy going 8-8. But let's take it back a little further. The whole reason I'm bringing this up is it seems like the Chicago Bears have a history of moving off of coaches that actually do reputable things for them. So you also look at the fact that they fired Mike Ditka, what's up? Just wait. Just wait. So when they fire Mike Ditka, obviously he had coached there for 11 years. Basically what had happened is some people say it was a squabble with Jim Harbaugh, kind of not getting along, a little bit of an interference with the media. But Mike Ditka, in his 11 years, literally won them a Super Bowl, only had 2 losing seasons in his 11 years there. Let's take it back even further to Lovie Smith, who got them to a Super Bowl in his 3rd year, but loses to Peyton Manning and the Colts, blew out my Saints in that NFC Championship game. They fired him after a 10-6 year. Dude only had 3 losing seasons, one of which was the first year that he got there and literally had the 32nd overall offense in points and yards. The Bears have had 1 winning season since letting Lovie Smith go. Ding, ding, ding. The 12-4 record that Matt Nagy actually established, where he was 1 kick away from Andy Pinero in getting to the divisional game against my Saints. So it's clear that the Bears fire good coaches who do things for them. That's just what history shows me. George Halas coached for 40 years and retired. They were great. But really ever since kind of Halas, the gap in between Halas and Ditka, I think it was Dave Winstead after Mike Ditka was not very successful. Lovie Smith comes in. I think he's solid, and they're still trying to find that coach ever since. Matt Nagy was kind of it, right? Winning record, 12-4, 2 playoff appearances, won them a division. And people were saying that year that Trubisky was not going to show up. It was really led by the defense. So realistically, the Bears have been lost at head coach. They don't know how to bring a good head coach in to actually give that toolage to Justin Fields. Let's look at the weapons that Justin Fields has had. You look at his rookie year is probably the best weapons that he's ever had. Just looking at the depth chart here. Just kind of generally speaking, David Montgomery, Tyreek Cohen, Damian Williams, Khalil Herbert, Allen Robinson, really not Damiere Byrd, really not Riley Ridley, obviously Darnell Mooney, Marquise Goodwin was still able to be a weapon. You had Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham. So kind of an end with the tight end room, right? Then you go and look at this year. The only person he's really got Obviously, there's Khalil Herbert, but we talked about DJ Moore, and DJ Moore's already throwing his hands up. Like, DJ Moore is literally already tossing his hands up, clapping for the football, not understanding necessarily what's happening with Justin Fields right now. DJ Moore is probably his best weapon, and they played 2 games together. He got the tail end of Allen Robinson. Justin Fields had the worst offensive line in 2021 with the most sacks given up by the Chicago Bears. The 4th worst offensive line last year was sacks given up, and they're on pace to be the 3rd worst offensive line this year. He's had 2 offensive coordinators, 2 offensive systems, 2 GMs, 2 head coaches, the 11th worst defense in his rookie year, and the worst defense in the NFL last year. So, just a guy who is undoubtedly, again, the number 2 quarterback prospect coming out of college, not Zach, not Trey, not Mac Jones, transferred to Ohio State literally due to being misused and underplayed at Georgia. And he was not a runner mainly in college. He had 218 carries for 867 yards and 15 touchdowns. Did you know, JT, that Trevor Lawrence had more carries, yards, and touchdowns in college? And look at what Trevor Lawrence has done. Trevor Lawrence was also 5-20 in his first 25 NFL starts with arguably the worst head coach ever and a slob in Urban Meyer. Then he gets Doug Peterson, who is a Super Bowl winning head coach. He's now 9-3 since he's been under Doug Peterson. Lawrence got a coach, Calvin Ridley, Travis Etienne, a much better offensive line, a talent, starting off when he got to Jacksonville that was much better than Justin Fields when he showed up. We saw Josh Allen when he got Stephon Diggs. We saw Jalen Hurts when he got Shane Steichen and A.J. Brown. Fields has more, DJ Moore, but he doesn't have the coach. He doesn't have the O-line. And you can argue, JT, that since Justin Fields has come into the league in 2021, I'm breaking a sweat over this take. I'm sure you guys can see it. Since Justin Fields was drafted 11th overall by Chicago in 2021, you can say no quarterback on a consistent basis has had a worse front office, head coach, offensive scheme, weapons, offensive line, and defensive support since entering the league. Fields needs a Shane Steichen. He needs a Doug Peterson. Because just like you said with Eberflus, if Eberflus wants to let Justin Fields go, then Justin Fields definitely has to go to another team. Or if you want to stop Eberflus's madness right now, maybe let him get through half of the season, because let's face it, you're on a 12-game winning or losing streak. You have to break it down at some point and get to the part of actually supporting Justin Fields. I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that.
Man, I got to go with the coaching. It's fair to point to the coaching, but at the same time, Chicago Bears have a history of getting rid of coaches that didn't deserve the game. For example, Lovie Smith, when you look at his final year, if you just look at, the record says 10-6, right? Well, the final season that he was in Chicago, 7-1, right? And when they start out 7-1, they have the best record. But who did they play during their first 7 games? Well, they only played one team that made it to the Green Bay Packers, and they lost to that team. You feel me? And then the only playoff team after was the Minnesota Vikings, who was in their division. So they struggled to beat playoff 7-1 start. They finished 10-6, and they missed out on the postseason. So I do think that decision to move on from Lovie Smith, and you said, what has Chicago done since they fired Lovie? What has Chicago? I mean, he hasn't had a winning record since. I mean, he was terrible with Tampa. He was terrible. It was terrible the single year that he was the head coach.
Because he was in his zone in Chicago, bro. He was in his zone. Lovie Smith only had a few losing seasons.
But at the end of the day, though, he peaked in Chicago. The Super Bowl, they never went back.
That's definitely fair.
In his final season, they went 7-1. They beat only one playoff division, and they lost to all the other 6. It's just, it was time with Matt Nagy, his 6 games, and the year prior, they only went to the playoffs because they got lucky enough that they played against bad teams enough to backdoor their way in, and they were bad enough that they didn't even do anything offensively. And most Chicago fans season to how good Vic Fangio was with how great that defense was, because Matt Nagy, I mean, yes, when it came to defensive coordinator, but at the end of the day, you can tell if you got a good head coach or not if what they specialize in isn't good. His offenses were always mid. The offenses were never know how Mitch Trubisky was a Pro Bowler that first season that they went 12-4.
Yeah, that's crazy to think.
Me? So
Mitch Trubisky and Pro Bowler in the same sentence.
Yeah, and Matt Nagy's supposed to be an offensive-minded coach, and you drop developing Justin Fields. Cool. So you bring in, well,
you had him for 1 year.
Getsy. Yeah, but it's like with Matt Nagy, he's an offensive-minded coach. Offensive-minded coach to become like the most sought after head coaching candidate because they feel if you just should lead to you having a rookie quarterback and you should be able to develop, be successful under you if you're an offensive-minded guru. But sometimes, like, you can be an offensive-minded coach and you at quarterback. Now, Matt Nagy, I'm not saying, the Bears whiffed on drafting Justin Fields, but, if a head coach that Justin Fields was never really that good and never really showed promise under him in his rookie season. Like, Luke Getsy, I don't think he's entirely bad, at least based on what I saw last year. This season went down a notch, but maybe that's because Luke Getsy is trying to run the offense that he's a coach. They modified the offense. If you go and you look, like the offense they ran the first 3 games was not the offense that he's in after. It was more RPOs, read options, zone reads, quarterback keepers. This year, they aren't really more pass heavy sets, a lot more passing. They're not really running they're not really running anymore. Design, seeing a lot of zone reads anymore. You're not seeing the RPOs. These are things that Justin Fields that's what helped him make the transition from Ohio State to the NFL. You see, you got to make the transition quarterback. But at the end of the day, though, it's like at the same time, the players got to execute plays. The players got to execute. And with Justin Fields, it's like some of the stuff that he's doing, you can't really, like, with DJ Moore being wide open on the flat, you got to see that. You feel me? Like, you got to understand that's your escape. You feel me? Like,
That's why
it's a mixed bag. Yeah, that there's more pressure on Justin Fields because him a third year. He didn't draft Justin Fields. Ryan Poles didn't draft Justin Fields. This isn't really their guy. So really, they're trying to make do for them just because, the previous regime drafted them in the first round. But it's like, you can move on from Justin Fields and maybe get a Caleb Williams or a Drake May. You feel me?
So they can mishandle him? So they can mishandle. I know it's 8, so you got to go soon. But so they can mishandle Caleb Williams.
Good. But it's like maybe Caleb Williams is a better fit in the system than what Justin Fields is. Not a great passer coming out of Ohio State. Statistically, he was, but if you watch the film, like he still sees some progressions. There was a reason why Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers, didn't even evaluate this dude. And the Ohio State holding the ball too long, not being great at dissecting defense in terms of pre-snap, still are the same issues that we have in Chicago, and it's not all his fault.
Yeah. Right.
Like you said, you have changes and whatnot, but at the end of the day, when you're drafted in the first round, you're getting drafted team
traded up for, so the pressure is already elevated. You're supposed to be the savior of a team that hasn't had a quarterback since like maybe Jay Cutler. I mean, I don't know, right?
Like Justin Herbert. Like Justin Herbert is really one of the best QBs in the league. He's about that, and his 5th, 6th season next year, and he's still balling out. So it's like same thing. Like when you get drafted in the first round, everybody knows you're not going to take made sometimes, but you still kind of have to make the best of it. That's why I feel for Justin Fields. Like if it doesn't work out this season, it's one of those situations where one party deserves more blame than the other. Like I definitely hear, and you say like, well, if they draft Caleb Williams, they'll ruin him too. But you got to remember, like every Caleb Williams is the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. I'm saying you got to be a really, like you got to be a really awful head coach. A guy like a Caleb Williams. He's such a more polished passer right now than what.
Yeah.
Justin Fields was coming out.
Right.
It's like, I love him. You feel me? And I'm not saying that I'm a terrible quarterback. Like, I still believe in him. I feel he can turn this around. I think the Bears are going to have to get back to the last year. They tried to get a little bit outside the box. They tried to implement some new things. Now they need to go back to what do that. But ultimately, like, if this doesn't work, I think that the Bears are probably best served in Fields because it'll be his third head coach. You feel me? Like, you don't even want to go through that QB in there. I think it's really 50-50. It's like, I agree. The coaching is not great. You feel me? I agree with that. But I'm sit here and make it seem like Justin Fields overlooking DJ Moore is something that, you feel me, he still has to be able to execute. Like, he got outplayed by Baker Mayfield. You feel me? Now, Baker Mayfield, like, coach, he has only one win this season. The dude almost missed the playoffs in the weakest in the NFL player in NFL history, and Tom Brady. You feel me? So it's like Tom Brady was able to carry you. Like, great quarterbacks have to overcome dysfunction. Like, Justin Fields, like, he has a prove. The situation is bad for him to play how he has the first 2 weeks. You feel me? It's like, I think it really is 50-50. Coaching hasn't been great, but the play hasn't been great neither. It's like these hands, like, this is the same stuff Mitch Trubisky was doing. I can't give you blame. I can't give you an excuse for that. I can't running right into a sack, 2 of them. You feel me? I can't give you an excuse for holding on to the ball as a mental clock. And he even talked about it. It's like, okay, you know, you got a mental clock. Get the ball out. Throw it like it. Extend the play. Like, you can't be holding on to the ball too long in year 3. Like, year 3 is where you really can figure out if a quarterback is him or not. Year 3 is where it all comes around. Year 1 is like, okay, the free trial. You feel me? You throw him out there, you just let him get there. 2 is where you're looking for that ascension. Like Trevor Lawrence, what's year? You're looking for that big jump. You feel me? Year 3 is where you're looking for him to really cement himself as that guy. And Justin Fields hasn't cemented himself yet. And against Kansas City this week, they really need him to
be ugly.
Have a great game. That thing can get out of hand. Now, I think Justin Fields can keep it close.
That Chiefs defense led by Spags, bro.
This is the best defense that Spagnuolo has had in all his years at Kansas City up to this point.
Oh yeah, man. Definitely one of the top ones for sure. Spags is doing his thing. Steve Spagnuolo is definitely making things shake. I want to respect your time though. Do you need to jump out, man?
No, we good, man. We can go shoot whatever.
Okay. Cool. I just wanted to make sure. All right. But no, that's some really great points there, man. I mean, I totally feel you. My thing is, and then we can move on to Deshaun Watson. I'm just real quick. Are you good to go through Deshaun Watson and then you'll hop out?
Yeah, we can cover like 2-3 more topics.
Sorry, I keep asking. I respect people's time like crazy. I don't want to.
We can do 2-3 more topics.
Okay, Batman. Sounds good. I'll probably just I'll hit this last little part of Fields, and then I think we'll get into Watson, and then I'll let you shoot because I got a couple things lined up for after your appearance as well. But no, I mean, great points that you said there, right? You know, eventually a player does have to produce, but when we look at how Jalen Hurts was extremely mishandled, and he got a gift in Shane Steichen coming over to really help the toolage with him. We see Shane Steichen literally having Anthony Richardson in a toe-to-toe matchup with a former number 1 overall pick in Trevor Lawrence in Anthony Richardson's regular season NFL debut. Not preseason, but regular season. Of course, he was playing, you know, decent in the second game as well, and then he gets knocked out due to injury. But Josh Allen didn't really have a solid foundation at first, was a very raw player coming out. Had to get Stephon Diggs to really take that leap. Like I said, Justin Fields has DJ Moore, but he doesn't have a coach. He doesn't have an O-line as good as a Jalen Hurts, as good as a Mac Jones, as good as a Josh Allen, as good as a Trevor Lawrence walked into. He walked into the worst situation of that quarterback class, and I hope that the Bears are able to see what they've actually got on their hands, because if things are worked correctly with Justin Fields, and of course we can say this about a lot of things in life and about a lot of players, like, oh, if I scratch the right lottery ticket, I'm gonna win $1 billion, right? We get that. Things have to fall into place for it to happen, but I can't rag on a guy, yet digging as deep as I did, knowing how the Bears kind of have this culture in them. And I just, again, worst O-line, worst coaching, worst offensive schemes, worst defense. I mean, where's even the leadership? The year he comes in, new coach, new GM. Not only a new head coach, but a new GM who has a new vision. So that kind of throws everything off, right? I mean, it really is going to be an interesting situation to understand how things unfold here with Justin Fields, with the Chicago Bears. Because I'm with you, man. I like him as a player. I love him as a player. One of my favorites in the league. I thought he was by far the second best prospect coming out of that class. And obviously, landing where he's landed now has definitely made some things different. And we also know where you land is everything. Like we got Deion talking about Shedeur wanting to go number 1 overall next year, but it's like Deion, no matter what year he goes number 1 overall in, unless it's a Niners trading the house or a, Panthers trading the house to get to number 1, and even then, the Panthers, rough roster. What is Bryce Young actually working with? But just a last bit here on Justin Fields before we get out of here. How much longer do you give Justin Fields? Is it the rest of the season? Does he have 5-6 more games? Like, what is your kind of timeline here for the window of Justin Fields, I guess, saving his job with the Chicago Bears?
Man, I'm giving him the whole entire season, man. It's like, man, if we're we're picking in the top 3 of the draft, then that means I got to get rid of him. Like, Andrew Luck came into the league and took the Indianapolis Colts to the playoffs. Chubb wasn't a good head coach. He did have Bruce Arians left. He was still carrying the Indianapolis Colts. Like, not every Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence to an extent. Like, he got ruined by Urban Meyer. Thank God for Doug.
Yeah.
And even Doug Peters just didn't work his final year in Philadelphia. It came down to, and then they went with Howie. And just like, sometimes you can have a good, and it just doesn't work out at quarterback. Like Jared Goff and Sean McVay. It worked for a while, and then like with Matt Eberflus and Luke Eberflus is a bad head coach. You feel me?
Bad.
You don't
Very
necessarily
bad. Very bad.
Think that Luke Getsy, offensive coordinator. And the reason for the ability to adapt, like he changed the personnel, he changed the scheme, like early, built it around Justin Fields, RPO, designed QB runs, and we saw that. And then they get back to that, but they're still, you feel me? I just feel like you got to go ahead and make the change at QB. At the end of the day, like Justin growth as a passer. At the end of the day, like he doesn't have the most ideal situation. We're going to have this dude being an MVP candidate before the season. Most valuable player means you elevate the team. You feel me? He has enough that he should at least be able to play at the Pro Bowl caliber level. The play calling isn't going to be that great, but the better the player, the better the play calling. Like, I think that Justin Fields deserves like 50% in the blame. I think it's a 50. I do think that he will get better because he did start out slow last year. But I think for the Bears, Fields puts you in a top 3 draft selection next year. Shoot, that's a W for you. You trade Justin quarterback in there, get more cap space too.
Yeah. Very.
What if Justin Fields gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings with Kevin O'Connell?
Yeah.
Jay Jettis, Jordan Addison, and I love Kevin O'Connell, but with a scheme like that, I would love Justin Fields. Imagine if Sean Payton got his hands on Justin Fields. Imagine, like if he went to but you see, like these are like historically great coaches. Every quarterback lands in a situation like that. You kind of don't have to. You kind of have started as to land with a head coach like that, like Mahomes or something like that. You feel me?
Right.
Justin Fields, you got to give him the whole entire season. Like, because then everybody's going to know you're a tank. You got to give Justin Fields the whole year. I would.
Definitely. I'm giving him the whole year as well. Great points that you made there. At least the rest of this season for him. But yeah, go ahead.
From a talent standpoint, standpoint, not talking about the standpoint, do you think that the Bears did a good enough job this offseason at least giving just a chance this year to show what he can truly do by acquiring DJ Moore, getting Darnell Wright, feel like set him up to fail? Has Ryan Poles at least gave Justin Fields a fair shot?
This past offseason was definitely their best. I wasn't really a major fan of like the linebacker moves because clearly they still have the worst defense in the NFL right now statistically. But going and getting DJ Moore, drafting a Darnell Wright, I think was absolutely great. Some great points that you brought up there. I do think this past offseason, yes, was obviously something put together to help Justin Fields go forward. They bring in Roschon Johnson. They even bring in Tyreek Stevenson on the defensive side of the ball, in there as at safety as a rookie. So like they did bring in some pieces for him for sure. But I think for people to be just, and of course, like we're on the conversation here because a lot of folks are talking about it and we've got points to make about Justin Fields because we think it might be too early just for you and I as well. But for people after just really one good offseason or two off seasons with Justin Fields walking into year 3, like they're ready to possibly pull the plug, what has had enough time to form? I mean, you can't place a house on just really wobbly 2x4s and not pour a foundation on it and expect it to be able to live in it. That's what I'm talking about with Caleb Williams or possibly Drake May coming over. Like I just had a personal situation in my life like this. If you take the person out of the environment, but you don't change the person, they're going to take those characteristics with them. Same instance as if you take someone out of an environment, but you don't change the environment, the foundation, anyone that steps into that is more than likely going to become a byproduct of that. Because we can sit here and say that Andrew Luck would probably still be in the league today if, one, he might not have went to the Colts, but most definitely, two, if the Colts would have done well enough to actually bring him in an offensive line so he's not getting murdered and crying 2-3 weeks before the year and people are demanding their season tickets back. So, where you land matters, of course. Do I think they've done enough to really support him up to this point? Obviously not with the verdict and the judgment and the defense case I just put out there for Justin Fields. But if we could get another offseason possibly like we had, then maybe there's something to be desired there. But to me, the coaching has to change. Two things have to happen. One of two things. Fire Eberflus by week 8 or 9 because he's clearly not it. Or you make a commitment to Justin Fields for the rest of this year and maybe even next year as well, because something clearly isn't working here. Again, the number 2 prospect out of that class, dicing people up from the pocket, the way he was able to move. And again, he wasn't mainly using his legs. The Bears kind of incorporated that in for him. And hell, you can think, wow, Justin Fields might have just been running for his life. Probably so. He's had horrible offensive line since he's been there, on pace to have another horrible one this year. So it's a lot going on, of course, with Justin Fields. It's a lot going into the situation, but I'm trying to find my last point here that I was just about to get on with it. But I mean, the coaching, like with Eberflus, you have to make a decision there. Like, to me, I think it's got to change now. You got to get an offensive-minded guy in there, like Doug Peterson-esque, Shane Steichen-esque, maybe Sean Payton-esque. And, like, we're talking about, legendary folks kind of in a discussion of what they've done in their tenures, short, long, players they've been with, whatever the case is. So that is a lot asking for that. And maybe even they've already kind of missed their window. Maybe they should have fired Eberflus after last year. Defensive-minded head coach coming over from the Indianapolis Colts. I didn't necessarily agree with the hire. But yeah, you either got to make a commitment to Justin Fields so you can clearly see what you can get out of him when he is built right again. The Josh Allen leap, the Jalen Hurts leap. Trevor Lawrence was 5-20 in his first 25 starts, just like Justin Fields was before he got Doug Peterson, and now he's winning 66% of his games, literally 9-3. The math might be a little above there. I think that's actually like 75% of his games. Excuse me. But yeah, I definitely give him the rest of this season, possibly even next. I think there's some more things to definitely work out there. On to another quarterback now in the show. Deshaun Watson's first 8 games back with the Cleveland Browns. Starting off this segment, JT, I'm going to give you 2 players, player A and player B. I'm going to let you take a guess at which one is Deshaun Watson and who could possibly be the other one. So player A, 58% completion, 184 yards per game, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 79.6 passer rating. Player B, 62% completion, 219 pass yards per game, 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and an 80 passer rating. This is the last 8 games, if I'm not mistaken, of these two said players. Which one do you think is Deshaun Watson?
I know for a fact player A is Deshaun. Or it might.
Okay. Who do you think
it might be.
Player A is Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
Player A is Deshaun.
Baker?
There you go.
I
No,
knew you
not
was
Baker.
Do that. Or it's not Baker?
It's not Baker. It's gonna blow your mind.
You got to tell me, Jimmy G?
Who?
No, Jimmy G. Thinking Jimmy G.
No, not Jimmy G. That's okay. This quarterback is unemployed. This quarterback is unemployed, JT. It's Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, in his last 8 games, is arguably playing better than a Deshaun Watson who has been guaranteed $230 million by the most desperate franchise in the NFL, making one of the most desperate moves. We've talked about how that was horrible for them. So that's just a little comparison there. Again, Deshaun Watson, a lower completion percentage, lower pass yards per game, less touchdowns, less interceptions, and also a slightly lower, kind of the same passer rating than Carson Wentz's last 8 NFL games. What'd you say?
Carson Wentz?
Yeah, Carson Wentz. That's player B.
Here? We might need to tell them to leave the live.
Man, that's going to be rough whether they're on the live or whether they see the video on the YouTube channel, man. But yes, Deshaun Watson's first 8 games back are definitely looking rough. Do you believe that Deshaun Watson, after this 8-game sample size with the Cleveland Browns, under Kevin Stefanski, post all of his off-field stuff, do you believe he can return to the Houston Texans form, or even something close to it, 65, 75, 80% of that?
Under Kevin, I just don't think it's going to work with him and Kevin Stefanski, because it's just like this scheme is just a lot different from what he was doing in Houston. You feel me? I don't really think Kevin's the coach. Like, they won a playoff game with him not even being on the sideline against Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
You feel me? And so did Baker. But what have the Browns done since Baker left? Since they scapegoated him and traded him away? Obviously, but Deshaun, you giving him $230 million to play like shit. I mean, like last year, I wasn't expecting him to play great. Cool. But eventually, how much time do I have to wait for Chai's quarterback? You feel me? I'm paying you $230 fully guaranteed. Like, I'm tired of waiting. And the crazy thing about it is that the Miami Dolphins and the Falcons really wanted this huge bullet.
Yeah,
it's like
so did the Saints.
Yeah, like, exactly. It's like with Deshaun Watson, I feel like he kind of peaked. You feel me? Like, we keep talking about Watson bounce back. What if this is just the new Deshaun Watson?
Horrible. Bottom 5 quarterback in the league, if so.
Same thing with the Denver Broncos. Like, this is just the new Russell Wilson. Even with Sean Payton, Russell Wilson looks better, but he still isn't it. Deshaun Watson is so much younger. You expect him to be able to get. Maybe he just needs a new head coach. I think you fire Kevin Stefanski into this season. You bring Lions offensive coordinator.
I heard you saying that.
Like, I really think that the Cleveland Browns are really attractive. People keep asking, what are you going to do with Deshaun Watson after this season? What the fuck do you mean? What are you going to do with Deshaun?
He's going to be right back underneath center, making his 60 a year.
Exactly. So you got to find a to make Sean look, serviceable. Same thing with the Denver Broncos. It's like the same situation, but the difference is that the Browns are in the AFC. And like I was telling people, like, all season was saying the Browns are going to be better than the Steelers. They're going to finish ahead of the team. I was like, okay, but they don't got.
I had the Browns winning the AFC North strictly off their schedule. Strictly off the schedule of how the AFC North played out, I had the Browns winning 13 games. That was also expecting Deshaun Watson to be how he should have been.
Exactly. But they need him to bounce back. The AFC, not just the AFC North. This is what this is how I break it down. The AFC, you watch the NBA, right?
Yep.
The C in the NFL right now is equivalent to the Western Conference in the NBA.
Yes, sir.
You
Absolutely.
got some of the best quarterbacks. In the NFC, you don't have as many stacked teams. And you don't have the only elite quarterback in the NFC is Jalen Hurts. And then you got like solid Q, Smith and Jared Goff. In the AFC, the teams that make it the furthest are the teams that back play with great overall teams and coaching. In the NFC, you can have a team like the Giants to the playoffs because the division is not that tough. But the teams that made it the furthest were the teams that had back play or either the good overall teams and roster with good coaching. You see what the Cleveland Browns roster, but they're lacking in two important areas. They don't got great quarterback play right now. Coaching doesn't look up to par, even though Jim Schwartz is coaching his tail off like that. That defense is
that defense is elite.
Yeah, like Jim Schwartz, he's doing God's work with that defense. But for Cleveland, Deshaun Watson is playing terrible. And Kenny Pickett is still the work in this division. You still need him to play at least at a top 15 level for you to be able in a division like this with Lamar and Joe Burrow, two top five. Lamar's like the top 5 quarterback. And in the AFC overall, it's like you got Trevor, like the best quarterbacks in the NFL mainly play in the AFC. Yeah, you have the Browns winning this division because you were expecting Deshaun Watson to play well. He's playing. So the Browns, of course, even if they got a great team, if he plays bad, they're not going to go anywhere. Point the finger at Stefanski because, of course, he had to okay this move. He had to say, like, give me Deshaun Watson. Fuck Baker. And Baker, it looks like he wasn't really all to blame. It's just the system.
Yeah. I love that you say, because when I first started podcasting years back, I said, coaching matters way more than talent in the NFL. The Patriots were never the most talented team in the league. Tom Brady was very mentally elite. See, you already know. Coaching is everything. Prime example, JT. Freddie Kitchens, with this same Browns roster, minus Deshaun Watson and a couple of players, blew it. 6-10, fired after the season. What the hell happens when Kevin Stefanski comes in? 11 wins, playoff win. Chad, anything is possible, has to throw to the fastest player in the NFL to escape a home playoff win against us. But the Browns is the Browns, right? Baker Mayfield regresses next season. Kevin Stefanski goes 8-8, 8-9, whatever it is. Then he falls to 6-11 because he doesn't have, literally his 11 losses, you could say, were because he did not have Deshaun Watson. Obviously, Deshaun has been 4-4 in his 8 games that he's been back in the NFL. But coaching is absolutely everything. Here's the thing, though. First of all, I want to talk about this real quick since you talk about Baker. The last 2 games, Baker Mayfield, 245 yards per game, 69.1% completion, 7.2 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 104.4 passer rating. Deshaun Watson's last 2 games as a Cleveland Brown, so this year. 194.5 yards per game, 55.1% completion, 5.6 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 69.1% passer rating. Just a little glimpse there on what Deshaun's done in his time in Cleveland versus what Baker did in his new home with the Bucs starting out. We know he gets traded to the Panthers, this, that, and the third. But I do believe Kevin Stefanski would be the one to do it because, correct me if I'm wrong, JT, but was Baker Mayfield's best year not under Kevin Stefanski in the first year where the coaching stepped in with the damn near same roster that Freddie Kitchens had, and they won a playoff game under Baker, right? So if Kevin Stefanski can do that with Baker Mayfield, and we'd like to assume that Deshaun Watson's ceiling is much higher than Baker's, maybe not now because of the way he's played through 2 games, but I think Kevin Stefanski would be the one to do it because Baker, after his little 7, 8, 9 lightning in a bottle games, which I've always thought that it was, they returned back to life. When Baker Mayfield had time, when he had a run game, when he had O-line, when he played with a lead, Baker Mayfield has a better passer rating playing with a lead than Justin Fields does. And maybe that's a little unfair to say, right? But Baker Mayfield with a lead, offensive line, run game, and maybe we could say that for every quarterback, right? You got him the right coach. OBJ gets out of town. He's throwing for 300 yards a game. He's got a 9-2 NFL record. Like Baker Mayfield came to be under Stefanski. Then he returned to Baker. Then Stefanski was like, okay, hell. Then it's Jacoby Brissett for a year. Then you get Deshaun Watson back after 11 games. So like this whole thing of maybe it's a different coach, different thing with Stefanski. I look at the whole situation from what Kevin's dealt with. And now he's got a Deshaun Watson who is unfortunately not performing. But you look at Alex Van Pelt. That was the offensive coordinator who came over in 2020, the year that they went to the postseason. And the offensive ranked the best it's been in over a decade. And realistically, over the past 20 years, that the Cleveland Browns were there. But Deshaun Watson clearly does not look like the same person anywhere he plays on the field, running, throwing, processing, pocket presence, fumbling, 2 15-yard face mask penalties from any player, let alone 2, let alone your quarterback. Oh, and not to mention the guy that's making the most money ever in NFL history and the biggest guaranteed contract of all time. Yeah, we've talked about that with Deshaun Watson with the Cleveland Browns.
Like he's pulling a masterclass heist you ever played, and you ever did like a bank or money heist, man. This is Deshaun Watson.
Get out.
He got the unlimited money. His job in the NFL. Yep. Show up every week, play like shit, and cash out at the game. And
that's right.
You know this.
All right. I get where you're going though. But Deshaun Watson with the Browns, 8 games, 4-4 record. So at least he's 500. 57% completion, 9 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 186 yards per game, a 76 passer rating. He has a 10.8% sack rating percentage, which is 31st behind only, drumroll please, Justin Fields, who he just got off of. And Justin Fields holds the ball longer than anybody besides Zach Wilson in the NFL. Through 2 games, Deshaun Watson has the highest miss rate in the NFL at 27.6%. So he's damn near missing 30% of his throws. Every third throw he puts out there, just about, he's missing it. I guess every third and a third or third and a half throw that he puts out there, however you want to cut the fraction, he's missing his throws. So we know Deshaun Watson's not looking the same. It doesn't even look like he's running to create space. He's running to run. Like, did he really touch a football while he was off the field? I mean, do we know that Deshaun Watson actually practiced while he was off the field? Because it damn sure don't look like it. Some people are talking about how he was meditating on the sidelines, and we're like, damn. First of all, I believe in meditation. If you haven't meditated before, if you haven't just taken a moment to mentally dissect your day on a surface level occasion, it can help a lot. So I'm with Deshaun on meditating, but having the camera cut to him, knowing that Deshaun was actually doing that before a very turnover-prone game where he played absolutely horribly, you got people asking him, like, is he still in his head? And let's be real, right? The off-field stuff, being away from the game, essentially missing 33 NFL starts, almost about, 17, 11, 28 NFL starts. We're missing a 28-game sample size from Deshaun Watson's career when he last left at the peak of his career. But before we get off Deshaun Watson here, do you think we're being too hard on him? It's only 8 games back, JT. He's only making $230 million guaranteed. I mean, he hasn't even played a full 16 games back yet, bro. Are we being too hard on Deshaun Watson?
It's funny because a reporter asked him that question. He was like, shoot, he don't blame anybody for having the criticism they have of him. He deserves it. So if he says I think we're on the money with him. It's like meditation works, and it is cool that then once you get done, you got TJ Watt lining up on the opposite side of you. And
right.
DeJuan Jones had the one, like, you probably got to meditate every single time you get off the field after you get done going against DeJuan Jones. You feel me? But we knew it was going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride against TJ Watt. But with Deshaun Watson, I don't think he's going to become completely garbage. I would like to think that he can at least get back to a top 15 level, but I think the new reality is that this is just a new Deshaun.
So sad.
Now, I'm still waiting before I confirm everything, but right now, he's scamming the Cleveland Browns. That's what looks
he said, I'm still waiting before I confirm everything.
Yeah, like I gotta wait the full season. Now, right now, I got the assessment for what he looks like right now. Terrible. One of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Now, I'm not a garbage QB because I'm still waiting for him to show a little bit more. So at the end of this season, or not even the end, like around week 10, week 11, we really would know by this point because the quarterbacks out there struggling. But right now, You know, with him making $230 million fully guaranteed, I want him to be struggling. So right now, like, I'm not saying I think Deshaun Watson is terrible overall, but on film with the Browns, he looks garbage.
Yeah.
You feel me? But Joe Burrow has struggled.
Definitely.
He's gotten out to us. Right now, I'm not saying like, oh, like it's completely over. But right now, like it. And if he keeps playing this way, eventually I'm gonna come around and say this is just the new Deshaun, and Cleveland Browns fans just need to accept the reality. And it's only going to be from that point.
Adjust your expectations. Yep.
Here's the thing, like
sad.
I don't think Kevin Stefanski is a bad coach. It's a tough decision for them because like he's just in a tough division. You feel me? But it's like you get, you know, like you got to make something shake with that. So to get replaced. Now, head coaching job, probably not. You feel me? But I do think solid play call. It's just like you just have a quarterback who just doesn't fit your scheme.
Right.
It's nothing against you. Like, it just doesn't work.
It's just the X's and the O's. It's the scheme you chose to run and the quarterback that ultimately you brought into your clubhouse, or not clubhouse, not baseball here, but you brought into your locker room, and it's like, this might be the new him. You got to adjust expectations, and I hate that. Like,
you know, it's
Russell
funny.
Wilson, Deshaun Watson.
People
like, damn, man.
And you know what's funny? Like, people crapped on Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien was such a bad. Won a couple of NFC South titles, won a playoff game or two. One of those being, then, you know, he was the man who was holding back Deshaun, right? Mac Jones looks pretty good right now. At least way better this season than what he did last year.
Right.
Who was Bryce Young's offensive coordinator at Bama?
Yep.
I'm not saying that Cleveland should hire Bill O'Brien, but all I'm saying is that, you know,
yeah, you are.
it has to be the system. Like, you got to find an offensive-minded coach that truly is going to be able to Deshaun Watson. I really think Ben Johnson should really be the hire. Like, I think the perfect guy, because Deshaun Watson, you see with Baker Mayfield, he was a really, you feel me? Like, the run game was always there. He had a really good offensive line. You know what, Baker Mayfield, a solid situation, he can win games for you. You feel me? But
yeah,
that's the thing with Baker, be perfect. And with a guy like
just like with Matt Ryan, it's got to be perfect.
Exactly. With a guy like, he's supposed to be able to still be able to win despite having
overcoming dysfunction.
Exactly.
Overcoming dysfunction.
But it's like, how can you overcome this? You kind of have dysfunction in your personal life as well. And I really think like this on Watson's fall off. Like what you said, like, I don't know if he wasn't putting in the work for real. You know, like maybe he wasn't putting in as much work, but I do feel you got to be like, oh, you just, it's true. Like, how can you really have the amount of time that you're dealing with all these allegations, lawsuits, and whatnot? Like, how can you truly be focused? How can you truly be locked? Situation where maybe it takes Deshaun Watson a year to truly bounce back. Who knows? But I think by the time 11, that version of Deshaun Watson, I feel is going to be the actual Cleveland's going to get for the remainder of his career, unless they just get a head coach who can revive him. But it ain't looking pretty right now for Deshaun. And I like him. You feel me? And a lot of people love him. Like, if it's the Saints, like, there were a lot of players that were going to sign with them for like way less money. Like, people really the teammates love him. Like, he's a really likable guy. He's one of the most likable players in the league, believe it or not. I think he's a person. I just think that, you know, it's just not a good fit in this system. I think they need to get him in a system where spread concepts, you know, more 3-4 wide. That's where I think he's the most comfortable in. And then another thing is this, like, him and Russell Wilson, you brought up Russell Wilson. Do you feel similar playing style? Like, I never think of Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson as being quarterbacks that are going to pick you. They're quarterbacks that do a lot of their big plays off
script.
Off improv. I think with Kevin Stefanski, everything is more like systematic. You want to be able to play within structure. You got to be able to operate
because of how Baker was.
Exactly.
Because of how Baker was. Baker could not overcome that shit. He could not overcome dysfunction. Baker had to have his simple 2 to 4 step drops. You're looking at OBJ, or you're throwing to, Hayden Hurst or Austin Hooper, whoever it was. It had to be very cookie cutter for him, because if not, Baker was going to roll back into the right and throw it out of bounds and have a horrible passer rating and a horrible completion percentage. And I'm not knocking Baker. I didn't super buy into him coming out of Oklahoma. He had a good rookie year, but I'm like, look, man, he's still showing us what he's showing us. He had the lightning in a bottle year, and I'm like, okay. It's funny that you bring that up as well, because it's really, simple system, kind of like 1-2 step. Deshaun Watson, he has to have full control over that offense. He has to be able to play off script. He has to be able to roll out of the pocket. He has to be able to throw on the run, make a Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes type of throw.
Do you think Deshaun...
That's when Russell Wilson was his best. Most of Russell Wilson's highlights, I feel like, come from off script. Real quick, they're talking about Russ and Peyton, right? So we saw in Russ's first game, a lot of dink and dunk. They're 0-2, blowing 18-point lead, both of the games at home. Sean Payton had to adjust his game to a noodle arm Drew Brees, who was literally targeting people with an average depth of half a yard, -1 yard, all the screen passes we threw, all the slants, all the in routes, out routes over the middle of the field. And then maybe Drew would give us that 35 to 45 yard sling that probably took everything out of him, and we didn't see it for another 2 months. I mean, really, that's how it felt. Sean Payton had to get in Alvin Kamara to help him supplement, to bring in a Taysom Hill who could be in the trick plays, to bring in all these players to help play that short game. And then you see Russell Wilson dinking and dunking in the first game, and I'm like, Sean, you got Russell Wilson, bro. You got me on the show all year saying that you and him were going to bring something out of each other we've never seen, and you're doing this? You're putting the Drew Brees system on Russ. You were just on the herd saying, I'm going to get all of the hit singles for Russ to be able to sing so he can be in harmony. Russ looks good in the first half, but we still got to see the adjustment. So I love that you bring that up about the scheme. You were going to say something else, though, I believe.
Russell Wilson just can't run that scheme, and it's I think Sean Payton's running that scheme because you can get the most out of Russ, because he doesn't have the athleticism to do what he used to be able to do.
Yep.
So you can't anymore. And with Deshaun Watson, it's he's never been a quarterback that I thought, oh yeah, he plays well within somebody who is at his best in chaos. Honestly, I think Deshaun Watson was making his biggest play. Everything was hitting the fan, and he was turning nothing into something.
Yep.
It's and you went from a game manager. The problem with Baker is he couldn't win games when it was time for games. When the run game wasn't there, he couldn't carry you. For Deshaun Watson, that's what you were expecting. Some win you games, and he can't do that. And I think that a large reason for it is because I just don't think for his skill set, Deshaun Watson is one of those players that you don't confine him to some of those players. You tell him go out there and play football. You feel me? Fuck it, just play football. Just do
straight up.
You feel me? And the Browns got a great team, so it's with somebody having
loaded
that kind of playing style, it can cause a little bit of chaos in a sense, because it's you're always rolling out of the pocket in a sense. But it's Deshaun was doing best in Houston, and that's him, just making shit happen. And he hasn't been doing that in Cleveland. He's been making shit happen for the defense.
Right. Straight up, 100%.
Fan, I was man, I'll take it.
Right. I had the Steelers defense in fantasy. Them boys got me 29 points. There's my quarterback, running back, good wide receiver of the week, however you want to call it. But all right, man, I'll let you scoot out of here. I got a few topics before I actually end episode 42, but I'll let you plug yourself, JT. I appreciate you so much for coming on. Guys, if you don't know who this guy is, 14,500 subs on YouTube. The dude goes live Monday through Friday, sports show, just like I do twice a week. He said, fuck that. I'm doing 5 times a week. Great topics, great energy, super real. You can tell he gets his research in. JT, plug yourself, man. Tell the NFL with AJL community just what you got going on and really what you're about, dude.
for allowing me to come on and talk ball with you on this Friday night. You guys can listen to the guys. We go live every day, Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. You can find us on platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, JT Sports, college football, NFL draft coverage. Football fan, the JT Sports podcast is the perfect place for you. Diehard football fan, respect the game. I live, eat, breathe football. So
that's right.
If you're like me, go ahead to the JT Sports podcast.
Man, I appreciate you. Hey, maybe I can get you on Tuesday and we could talk some Colorado, Oregon, because I'm taking the Buffs with you now. I'm already taking the Buffs with you in the game.
Hey, man, I'm trying to tell people.
Coach Prime, Shedeur gonna do it without Travis Hunter, man. We hype about it.
We hype about it. But hey, even if they win this game, people are going to do the exact same thing next week.
Oregon hasn't played anybody.
Exactly.
Like, bro, Bo Nix is fire, dude. I don't care what y'all say. Bo Nix is one of my favorite QBs in college right now.
Yeah.
Straight up. But JT, I appreciate you, man. You could have spent the last hour and 40 minutes anywhere else on a Friday night, and you were tapped in here with me on episode 42. I want you to know you're always welcome on the show. I'd love to be on your show. I'll probably DM you next couple days, see if you want to come on and talk some college football, maybe NFL next week. But you have a blessed Friday, bro. And I'll be supporting the content as always, dude.
You too, man. I appreciate you for having me on.
All right, guys. Going to get into the last bits here of episode 42 of the NFL with AJL. Let's take a small little break. This has been episode 42 of the show. Please make sure to like the stream, subscribe on YouTube, share the stream wherever you're at. Y'all have been crushing it for me on social media. As always, the QR code here in the corner of the screen will give you every bit of podcast and social media content at the NFL with AJL on all social media platforms. If you can't find me, you're simply not looking hard enough. And as always, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. Whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, Buy and Sell with AJL is the company and the team you need to work with in the 2023 real estate market. Get in the comments or drop your email in their DMs to get on their exclusive newsletter and possibly sign up for their AI system they have implemented to really help buyers and sellers with a lot of market trends and data for you to make an informed decision on buying or selling a piece of real estate. All right, so Deion Sanders says that Shedeur is not going to the draft this year. He wants him to be number 1 overall in the draft, not number 2 to Caleb Williams. And there's kind of two sides here, right? You know, the earlier you get picked in the NFL draft, usually you're going to a bad situation. You guys heard me say it with JT, bad roster, possibly bad franchise. Unless you're having Kyle Shanahan give up the house or the Panthers give up the house to move up to the first overall, maybe, second, third overall pick, you're more than likely going to a Arizona Cardinals, Chicago Bears, maybe Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts type of football team. And I know with the way that Deion has presented himself with Colorado this year, with the way that he is going to absolutely continue to go through the season, because it's personal for him. They're not here. They're coming. They've arrived. They're here to do big things. We know what he wants for Shiloh, what he wants for Deion Sanders Jr., what he wants for Shedeur Sanders. And with his son being Shedeur as the quarterback of Colorado, we know he wants him to go first overall, just like he said Travis Hunter after one game. Travis Hunter's a number 1 pick on both sides of the football. Deion loves his kids, literally Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, Travis Hunter, he thinks Travis is really a lot like him. He thinks he's a lot like Prime Time. He's going to want to see the biggest thing for these kids. But does he really want his son going to a potential team with a bad roster, with a bad leadership? You guys just heard a spillover about how coaching really matters with Kevin Stefanski with the Cleveland Browns, and you damn sure just heard the probably close to 40-minute verdict on Justin Fields and how you have to have a solid foundation if you want things to actually be able to perform. And where you land in this league absolutely matters. So for Deion Sanders to want his son to be picked first, I hear you on the motivation. I hear you on the confidence. I hear you on the message loud and clear, Coach Prime. I hear you, Time, no doubt about it. But I believe that you would realistically like Shedeur to be in a better situation, just like Justin Herbert landed with the Chargers. Just like some other quarterbacks that were drafted later on that probably landed with a squad that was going to better suit them than being a top 3, top 5 pick. But here's also the other thing that I think about as well. Deion understands that Shedeur has only played 3 Pac-12 games so far. And it will just be one full year of doing so by the time they get to the end of this season with Colorado. Shedeur needs more than that. Shedeur needs more of 2 excellent years at Jackson State, 2 SWAC championships, and possibly whatever happens at the end of Colorado's season before he declares for the draft. I would like to think that not only would he want to get more playing time, but that he would play, obviously kind of goes hand in hand. He would play that second year, maybe even try to get another year of eligibility. I'm not necessarily privy on how that exactly works for some of these players, but I think Deion knows that his son needs more playing time than just a little bit of Pac-12 football, especially in the Colorados, especially with, the Colorado Buffs. This is a reason I have Bo Nix above Shedeur Sanders on my, kind of big board that I'm making right now for quarterbacks, because Bo Nix played years with Auburn. Yes, he might not have been great, but he was competitive as hell. He played under Gus Malzahn. He got to play Georgia every year, Florida, Alabama every year in the Iron Bowl, Tennessee, especially getting to play Alabama in the Iron Bowl, which is arguably the best college football game every year, always one of the best. It draws a crowd. I like Bo Nix, even though he's only been with Oregon going into his second year, because of the fact that he's seen those SEC offenses, been inside that SEC play, looked at those SEC defenses in an LSU, in a Georgia that unloads players every year to the draft. Shedeur getting more playing time in the Pac-12, seeing more of these Colorado State, TCU, Oregon, USC type of games, that is what's going to make Shedeur better as a player, because Deion Sanders is a winner everywhere he goes. He's an All-American at FSU. He's a 2-time SWAC champion, 2-time Coach of the Year for Jackson State. Obviously one of the only players to ever play in a Super Bowl and a World Series. Apparently he didn't play in the World Series on this Bleacher Report interview podcast with Taylor Rooks. He said he was just actually sitting there, but he played in the football game. We know he's a Defensive Player of the Year, Super Bowl champ, one of the best returners. Like, we know Deion Sanders is a winner everywhere he goes. There's no doubt about that. So we know he wants the same for his kids. And I know that Deion is smart enough to know that, again, just 1 year of Pac-12 football combined with 2 years of, yes, great stats, great play. And this isn't a knock on HBCU talent, but we know that HBCU talent is not the cream of the crop when it comes to college football. I'm all about the more coverage going for it. I'm all about how HBCU players should be more in the league, but the fact is a fact. And I think that is why it was a big reason that Deion wanted to go take over Colorado, bring his son with him, make his son the starting quarterback. Oh, he's just a starting quarterback because he's Deion's son. Oh, he's just got Sanders on his last name, so he's going to get that discount. Bullshit. Shedeur Sanders is doing exactly what he needs to do. And these next 2 games without Travis Hunter against Oregon and against USC, these games will be the difference in Shedeur Sanders being a top 10/day 1 pick to a possible day 2 mid-second round guy. And that's no knock to Shedeur, because Bo Nix is fantastic. I literally think he looks like Russell Wilson in college right now. Clearly, Caleb Williams is a consensus number 1 overall pick and looks like Patrick Mahomes. We've got a Michael Penix. We've got a Quinn Ewers. And we like to rank these guys in the spots because what you see in college matters. That's why we were all talking about Trey Lance. Now we clearly see where he's at. Anthony Richardson with only 13 college games. Like, where you land matters and what you go through matters. You would think SEC quarterbacks, really thankfully with Alabama putting so many in the league lately, Bryce Young, Jalen Hurts, Tua, that they would be the cream of the crop because of the defenses and the offensive schemes that are basically NFL-esque that are inside the SEC. Not always the case, though. So very interesting, because we even saw Caleb Williams' dad, say the same thing. My son will not go play if he doesn't like what the first overall pick is presenting. Now we've got NIL. Shedeur Sanders is the second most behind. It's not Caleb, because I think Caleb is the 4th. Is it Angel Reese that leads all NIL? I'm not really sure, but these kids are making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million bucks a year. Obviously, and even the longer that Shedeur waits, the more he's going to naturally make, because it's only going to be a matter of time before a quarterback signs a $65 million a year deal. I don't care who it is. It's only a matter of time before it happens. So this is kind of a thing that we've seen, like when the transfer portal became a thing, when the extra years of eligibility were starting to get finessed, when NIL came around. Like, could these guys really ramp up the playing time, make their money, and get the experience so by the time they go to the league, like, they can kind of take as much control as they can? Because we saw an Eli Manning literally get drafted and not want to go play for the Chargers. and ended up going to play for the New York Giants. Not saying it's going to necessarily be the same type of thing, but it is interesting to see as Shedeur Sanders he wouldn't be the number one overall pick this year, right? You want your son in the spotlight. You want him to be taken highly, but it's just more pressure. It's just more expectations. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that Shedeur Sanders cannot handle that, because he absolutely can. We've seen it time and time again. He's been tested in 3 straight games and is now going to play the 2 biggest games of his career and of the season without their best player, one of their best players in Travis Hunter. So we'll see how everything rolls out. Y'all get in the chat, get in the comments. Let me know what you think about Deion Sanders saying that Shedeur isn't going to go to the NFL draft this year. He wants him to be the number 1 overall pick, not number 2 in the shadow or in the possible limelight of Caleb Williams. I was going to talk Warren Sapp wanting to coach for Colorado in 2024. I think we'll save that to the next show because I didn't expect this show to go as long with JT. I was also going to talk Trevon Diggs being out for the season with the torn ACL in practice, but I think we'll save that for Tuesday's show. I'm going to get into the NFL Week 3 picks, talk about the Saints-Packers preview in the Who Dat Corner, and then we'll be out of here on episode 42. So let's go ahead and get into picking every NFL game for week 3. As you guys can see, last week I went 12-4, much better than my 9-7 start to week 1. We are 21-11 on the season with a 65.6% hit percentages. And I'm sorry the graphics keep changing up every week, but I might just stick with this kind of graphic here because they put it out every week. I like it when I can get the logos and the verses and all that you've seen in the last couple of videos. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. I would have picked the San Francisco 49ers, the best team in the NFL, to beat the Giants, one of the worst teams in the NFL. There's a reason I didn't talk about it tonight. They were supposed to go in and beat them the way they did, and they did it. I would have taken the Niners, and I ended up getting the pick right. I'm going to take the Titans over the way that they're playing right now, especially compared to the Cleveland Browns and how I was just talking about everything with JT. Titans have a great front 7, good defensive line, solid defense. Deshaun Watson is not playing like himself right now. They just lose Nick Chubb. What is the Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford running back committee, or is Jerome Ford just going to be the running back 1 there? The defense is still good. I do believe that the defense could stifle the Tennessee Titans, DeAndre Hopkins, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, Tyjae Spears. And I almost want to take Cleveland here in a bounce back game. Like, honestly, as I'm making the pick right now, I'm like, damn, do I really want to take Cleveland? Because Cleveland's at home. I like the roster of the Browns better than the Tennessee Titans, but the way that the Browns just played, I'm sticking with my gut. I always tell people, don't change your answer on a test if you're confident in it. I'm sticking with the Tennessee Titans here. The Falcons and the Lions. This could be a great game of the weekend. I think it will be one of the better ones. I would like to take the Atlanta Falcons, but I just realistically think that the Detroit Lions are a better football team right now. I like Jared Goff over Desmond Ridder. I guess you could say, kind of comparable with Arthur Smith and Dan Campbell. I love the defense of both of these teams, really the defense of the Atlanta Falcons here, but I believe the offense of the Detroit Lions will be just a little too much for the Atlanta Falcons defense here, since they have only played the Carolina Panthers. They have only played the Green Bay Packers. I do think this is going to be the best team of the year that they've played. So go ahead and give me the Detroit Lions here. The New Orleans Saints and the Green Bay Packers. Y'all already know what's going on. I'm taking my New Orleans Saints in this game. We're going to talk about the Saints-Packers preview when we get into the Who Dat Corner in just a minute. But the Saints, I think, are just a better team than the Green Bay Packers. I like the quarterback. Packers probably have a better O-line than us and how we're playing right now. The Saints defense is clearly elite. Jordan Love plays the Bears, worst defense in the league. Plays the Falcons, good defense. Don't think it's as good as ours. It's comparable. They could possibly be evenly good, right? But I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints here over the Green Bay Packers. The Broncos and the Dolphins. Potential bounce back game here for the 0-2 Broncos. The Dolphins, I have them at 7 on my power rankings. I could probably put them as a top 5 team with the way they've played so far this year in a shootout and then really muscling it up against Bill Belichick. I just believe the offense here will possibly be too much for the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos offense in the first half on scripted plays, Sean Payton and Russell Wilson are doing great, but they're not adjusting after halves. Miami has shown that they can be versatile. They can win in a shootout. Tua can throw for all those yards, and he can also take 60% snaps with 3 high safeties bracketing Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and still beat you 24-17, just like he did against the New England Patriots. I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins in this game. The Chargers and the Vikings. The battle of 0-2 teams here. The battle of 2 very surprising teams here so far in the NFL. I like the offense of the Chargers over the Vikings, no doubt. And we see that the Vikings, no Adam Thielen, losing Jared Cook, losing Dalvin Cook. Like, we've seen some pieces get away from this team offensively, the way they're playing so far this year, losing to the Bucs, who have a good defense. Like, I won't necessarily knock them for that because the Bucs do have a good defense. But the Los Angeles Chargers, they don't have a defense to necessarily possibly stop this Minnesota offense. Something tells me here to take the Chargers, though. I know Minnesota's at home. Going to take the Los Angeles Chargers in this game. The New England Patriots and the New York Jets. I'm going to take the Patriots in this game as well. Bill Belichick has always made a fool of Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson throws 3 interceptions last week against not arguably one of the best, against one of the best defenses in the NFL in the Dallas Cowboys. Again, Bill Belichick takes away your best weapon. If he was just able to hold Tua and company to 24 points, I can only imagine what he's going to possibly do here to the New York Jets. Now, I know the defense of the Jets is better. I get that. I know that the offense of the Jets is potentially better. I get that. But I still like Mac Jones and this coaching over Zach Wilson and Robert Saleh. Give me the New England Patriots. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to play a great game this weekend against the Washington Commanders. Eric Bieniemy is going to have his first real test to go up against an offense here. They beat the Cardinals. They beat the Broncos. I give them credit for the Broncos win, but I obviously can tell the Broncos are not what I thought they were this year. The Buffalo Bills blow out the Raiders 38-10, kind of get back to themselves. I can see the Bills here winning a potential shootout of like 35-31. Give me the Buffalo Bills. Houston and Jacksonville. Give me Jacksonville, clearly the better team. CJ Stroud, I believe, is still kind of nursing a shoulder injury. I didn't get super into the injury reports before I started going through these picks or even before I got into the show, but I think this is pretty straightforward. Nice divisional game. Jacksonville's at home. They win comfortably. Indianapolis and Baltimore. Anthony Richardson is officially out this week, so Gardner Minshew steps in. I just think Baltimore is the much better team here, the more explosive team. I like everything about Baltimore over the Indianapolis Colts. Carolina versus Seattle. Bryce Young is not playing in week 3. I'm fairly positive. He has the ankle injury. JT said call Child Protective Services because it only took 3 weeks for Bryce Young to get hurt underneath the Carolina Panthers' watch. I do think the Seattle Seahawks are the better team here, clearly. Panthers are a bottom team in the league for me. And Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Pete Carroll in that defense, I think they'll make just fine work here of the Carolina Panthers. The lock of the week, not even going to go into it. The worst team in the NFL right now in the Chicago Bears versus the top 3 team in the NFL right now in the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs can probably win this one 35-0, 42-0, 42-14, 35-7, 42-3. I don't know. Chiefs in a blowout, though, by far. Lock of the weekend. Dallas and Arizona, another lock of the weekend. Not too many great games on the slate here. Going to take Dallas in a blowout as well on the road, but they're playing Arizona. Dallas is going to do what Dallas does. They're going to blow out bad teams, and everyone's going to be like, 3-0 Dallas Cowboys. Jets, Giants, Cardinals. Kind of wonder there. I'll take Dallas, though, no doubt. Pittsburgh and Vegas. I think this one could be possibly sneaky good. Now, yes, the Raiders are coming off of a 38-10 blowout over the Buffalo Bills. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are coming off of 2 horrible games to start the year, and they're somehow 1-1. Blown out by the Niners, winning the turnover fest and the hideous Matt Canada offense against the Cleveland Browns. But I took Mike Tomlin last week at home. Something felt right about it. Raiders are coming off the uglier game than the Steelers, so I'll take the Pittsburgh Steelers here. Not going to bet against Mike Tomlin. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think it's be a sneaky, we won't go away game from the Bucs here. Bucs are at home. Jalen Hurts facing off against this good defense, which I've always thought it's a good defense, even with kind of the pieces that they moved around. Baker Mayfield is clearly comfortable. He's wheeling and dealing right now in his new role with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got a lot of respect for what's happening there, but clearly Philly's the better team. Philly's the better roster, and ultimately Philly is just going to win this football game fair and square. The Rams and the Bengals. I almost wanted to tank Cincinnati here in a bounce-back game, but Joe Burrow's got that aggravated calf injury. The Rams are one of the most surprising teams in the NFL this year. Byron Young, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Matthew Stafford, just absolutely being able to die stuff up, get comfortable. Credit to Sean McVay in the way he is able to coach that damn team. The draft picks, he's a hell of a salesman. Everybody wondered why OBJ came over in the Super Bowl year, and you see that the way he produced in the Super Bowl is exactly why he decided to go be with the LA Rams. Give me the Rams for how they're playing right now and the damn good coaching job of Sean McVay. This guy can really get coach of the year. I'm just be honest. The Rams are expected to be a bottom 5 team, bottom 10 team in the league. I feel horrible for saying they were only going to win a couple games because already Sean McVay, not Sean Payton, as I almost said, is showing me what he can actually do. Give me the Rams over the Cincinnati Bengals. So I will take the Niners. Already took them. I'm going to know. I'll take the Titans, the Lions, the Saints, the Dolphins, the Chargers, the Patriots, the Buffalo Bills, the Jaguars, the Ravens, the Seahawks, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Eagles, and the Los Angeles Rams. Again, 12-4 last week, 21-11 on the season. So I got a 65.6% pick success rate here on the NFL with AJL as we're picking every NFL game from every single week as we go through the season. And let's go ahead and get tapped into the Who Dat Corner, where I, Adam Joseph Lewis, host of the NFL with AJL, give you weekly New Orleans Saints updates, teams, players, game previews, and definitely game reviews. If you're a fan of the show, you already know what time it is, as we always say when we get into it. So let's go ahead and get into the Who Dat Corner. Saints-Packers preview. I want to start off with a couple of fun facts here that the New Orleans Saints have actually presented as we're only 2 weeks through the NFL season. The Saints are the only team with 3 wide receivers in the top 35 in receiving yards: Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and none of our receivers have drops this year. 0 drops this year from NFL receivers that play for the New Orleans Saints. The Saints defense is now the best road defense since 2018 with 18.7 points per game. I think that is a very big testament to what Dennis Allen and Sean Payton were able to put together before things obviously got the way that they did. We're still a very elite defense right now. I hate that the best defense in the history of the franchise comes around as the best player in the history of the franchise, Drew Brees, is heading out of the door. But hey, the NFL's not parallel, stands for not for long, and ultimately you have to adjust and be able to get through this league. But the big thing, and this is going to lead right into my key points of the Saints here. The New Orleans Saints are now 16-1 when Taysom Hill has 7 or more carries. I'm going to read that again. The New Orleans Saints have only lost 1 game in the 17 games that Taysom Hill gets 7 carries or more. Oh, and Taysom Hill's number 7, right? Funny how that works. I actually just kind of realized that. So let's get into some offensive expectations for the New Orleans Saints as we get into week 3 against the Packers on the road. We're 2-0. The offensive line is the big thing here. The offensive line has to build that foundation so we can get the offense rolling like we need to. If we want Michael Thomas and Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed to continue to be in that top 35, to continue to have these big games, I love our wide receiver trio. I didn't think I'd say that this year. I love Chris Olave coming in. I knew what Rashid Shaheed was last year, but clearly he was an UDFA for a reason. Love that he's made the team. He's got his money. He's signed. He's in packages. Thankfully, Michael Thomas is healthy. He needs to get out of Derek Brown's way. People saying slant boy running a slant run into that locker room. But I really do like the wide receiver trio that the New Orleans Saints have right now. Because again, for a long time with Breeze, like it was only Michael Thomas. And then we go and sign Emmanuel Sanders. And we had the little trinkets of Keith Kirkwood and Traquan Smith and Tommy Lee Lewis. And it's like those guys were solid when we threw to them, when they were accounted for in a package, when they were actually put into a scheme that the Saints were running. But the offensive line has to be solid. Trevor Penning, I'm looking at you, bro. Cesar Ruiz with your 4-year, $44 million a year. I'm looking at you, man. $44 million in total, $11 million a year. I'm looking right at you. I see it on the tape. Derek Carr had only won 7 of the 33 games that he scored 20 points or more. Derek Carr is now already 2-0. Derek Carr was 7-26 when he scored 20 points or less. The New Orleans Saints have not scored 20 points in a game this year, and they're already 2-0 with Derek Carr. They scored 20 in the last game, so literally 20 points or less by the stat. Derek Carr is already 2-0. So it shows that he doesn't have to continue to put up points as a premium, but he's going to need his offensive line protection in order to get comfortable. Because even though he was pressured 50% of the time in week 1, I love the fact that he threw for 300 yards and still a great completion percentage. I don't like the horrible interception. And we saw what the pocket can be like in the preseason. I need that. I understand Ryan Ramczyk is kind of struggling with some injuries. I understand that Trevor Penning and Cesar Ruiz and Andrus Peat and James Hurst are some of these guys, and Eric McCoy are some of these guys that we have to move around. I'm buying into all of them. I just need the performance from them, because without that, the Saints are not going to go the places that they need and establish the offense we know that we're capable of without the support in the trenches. It starts and ends there. Derek Carr's pocket presence. Look, Derek, We know that the offensive line is not the greatest right now. We understand that there's still kinks being worked out of the system. We know, just like you said, that we're not playing our best football right now. We're not even playing close to our best execution of football, and we're undefeated. We're still winning games. Close games. We've only given up one touchdown this year, but we're still winning games. When Derek Carr is in the pocket, he's got to be able to pick up that pressure better. He's got to quit patting the football so much and kind of hesitating as he's looking downfield. Again, I know I talk on a podcast, on a camera, and a mic. He's making $40 million a year for my favorite NFL team. I get that. But I'm going to still come up here and have an opinion about it as a diehard fan to know what I need to see out of these players to hit the ultimate goal, what all the fans want, obviously, to win another ring, to win a Super Bowl. I've never said Derek Carr would be the guy to take us there, but does he have the potential? Absolutely. If the offensive line is there, absolutely. I need Derek Carr to kind of have more confidence. Still getting on the same page with his receivers. Michael Thomas, obviously, we see him cutting on some of those routes, and people are wanting to call for Jameis Winston. Oh, he had the chemistry with the receivers. Y'all really want Jameis Winston throwing that ball? I get it. He was 5-2, but under Sean Payton. He came off an ACL injury and then played under Dennis Allen. So I'm just kind of wondering, you really want Jameis Winston? Because I don't. I think Carr processes the game at a quicker rate and ultimately just better than Jameis does. Decision-making might not be exponentially or even much more better, but I think it's better than Jameis's. I feel more confident Derek Carr dropping back in that pocket through 2 weeks than I ever did with Jameis Winston with the New Orleans Saints. And that's not a knock on Jameis. We had tape on Jameis. We knew what he was coming in. And the same thing with Derek Carr, right? We know what Derek Carr is coming in. He never had a top 20 defense, top 25 defense with the Las Vegas Raiders in the 10 years he was there. And they cut him. In a year where the running back had the most yards ever and the wide receiver had a career year, which is a former teammate, they cut him. But hey, Derek Carr's pocket presence, getting back to the point, has got to be at a better level. Because again, we know the line's not there. I've seen when you move outside of the car, bro. Well, outside of the car, literally. When you move outside of the pocket, you can make things happen. You can move some things around. I've seen you make throws on the run. That throw on the run last week to Rashid Shaheed was beautiful. Going over the right side of the field. Absolutely love that. If I'm thinking correctly, I think that was Rashid Shaheed. The play calling, which kind of goes into using Taysom Hill. When Taysom Hill gets 7 carries, the Saints are 16-1. Taysom Hill was the leading rusher in last week's game and perfectly fit in for when Jamal Williams left. We don't want to see Jamal Williams continue to be out. We know he's going to miss some time, but for Taysom, again, the looks we were giving Taysom, the RPOs, the power runs, just the handoffs, throwing a single pass. That was my issue. When we would bring Taysom Hill in the shotgun and he would just immediately power run. Like, the teams know we're going to do that. Get him to just come in and do a handoff. It makes the defense think, oh, he's going to hand off and try to do that power run. No, not really. You've got 4 defenders worried about Taysom while Kendre Miller's busting up to the left. Or Alvin Kamara's coming back in. Whatever the case is. But Taysom Hill has proven to be kind of that X factor for us when we need him. He's done it in playoff games. He's done it in clutch moments. He was not undefeated as a starter. He played as a starter, which I enjoyed watching Taysom Hill as a starting quarterback over the couple of, games that he had while Drew Brees was out. I was okay with that. But we have to use Taysom Hill in a better way. RB1, some of these looks. His physicality and aggression is like no other. I saw someone post on a Saints group today. If you ask that man to play linebacker, knowing his luck, he'd jump in and get a pick 6. And I'm not saying that Taysom is going to be able to do that. Like we've heard some crazy stuff this week about apparently Micah Parsons getting snapped at an offensive position. But we know what Taysom Hill brings with the wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, running back capabilities. When Taysom is in the offense, because it's kind of feeling like we've gotten away from the offense over the last couple of years, when Taysom is in the offense and flowing like that, it feels like just everything comes together better. Like he is that person we need in the offense to keep others guessing, to give us that upper hand, to give us that versatility because of the way we can use him in packages. And I think it is no freaking irony that the Saints are 16-1 when Taysom Hill gets 7 or more carries in a football game. And it goes over into the run game. I'd like to see more Kendre Miller. We obviously know Jamal Williams is out. Tony Jones did impeccable in pass blocking last week. Go check X. Go check Instagram from the Saints, Barstool, New Orleans, whatever. Tony Jones was impeccable. impeccable in the pass protection last week. I know only 12 carries, 34 yards, still had 2 touchdowns. Still came in the absence of a Jamal Williams, not having a Kendre Miller, and your best running back in Alvin Kamara on the team yet because he's serving that suspension. Tony Jones really won me over last week. I love the pass protection that he's showing. The 2 touchdowns were great. Of course, I'd like to see more than, three and some change, high 2s, low 3s in terms of yards per carry. But the run game, until Carr gets on the same page as his receivers, some people said we've been a run-first team for a while, and I kind of agree with that in a way. When we've been able to establish the run, and this is really like any NFL team, right? When you're able to establish the run, you earn the respect of the other team. You make them fear the play action. You make them fear the other possible things that are going to happen, because when you have to pack possibly 6 or 7 in the box to stop the run, you're able to earn the respect on the back end. So the O-line for the offensive side of the ball clearly got to play better. I want to see more out of Carr's pocket presence. The play calling, mixing in Taysom, getting the run game established is definitely key. Defensive expectations versus the Green Bay Packers and really Jordan Love. So we got the secondary without Marcus May. He's suspended from the DUI from 2021. He's suspended for 3 games. Freaking Kamara suspended. We got Jake Haener suspended. But sticking to Marcus May being suspended for us here. I've liked Marcus May for the most part. I know he's not a fantastic defender. I know he's not a, crazy good safety that we can always depend on. We've seen him blow some coverages. We've seen him get picked on, miss some tackles, And again, we can say that for a lot of players in this league. But knowing that we're not going to have Marcus May, I don't believe Christian Watson's going to play. It's kind of curious about Aaron Jones as well, which makes me feel even more comfortable about this pick. But how are the other safeties going to step up? We hear about was it Jordan Holden? Something. Let me look up Saints backup safety. I don't remember. Somebody that was stepping in. Matter of fact, let me look real quick because I know he's on the depth chart. Jordan Howden. Okay, I was close. Jordan Howden stepping in, getting a lot of the first team reps. We've heard of that confirmation about how he's stepping into that role. And I trust what the defense is putting together to bring him in. I trust what we're really possibly going to be able to do in that absence of Marcus May. Do I think the defense will take a hit? Yes, I do. Do I think that, we're going to feel Marcus May not being in the lineup? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's one of our better defensive secondary players. He's the reason, one of the big reasons, a reason next to Tyrann Mathieu that we've got the safety tandem that we do, that we've got the passing defense that we do. I'm not really afraid of Jordan Love, again, because he's played the Falcons, who were a good defense. He put up some points on them. I think we're better than Atlanta, and he did play the Bears. It was really a 38-13 game, 38-12, 38-14, possibly they end up winning 38-20. Talking about the late touchdown there that made it look kind of closer than it was. But I'm not afraid of Jordan Love. Aaron Jones kind of coming off the injury. Don't know about Christian Watson. I'm not afraid of this Green Bay offense. I don't have them in the top 15 teams. I didn't have them but winning just a few games, or I think more than a few, but not even double digits this year. Didn't have them winning the division. Crazily enough, I had the Bears winning the division, but we see how the NFL season is playing out through 2 years. So again, I trust the secondary. Banged up Aaron Jones, I think we'll be able to kind of contain him there, contain that run game. I think the secondary will be okay on the back end. Luckily, again, they don't have that receiving threat. I believe in Aaron Jones, and of course, Christian Watson's kind of curious for this game as well. So some of their biggest threats, we're not going to necessarily have to worry about. I'm cool with the linebacking room. I love how we are getting pressure with our front four. Carl Granderson, Cameron Jordan. I just love the guys that are stepping up, showing that they have to play their tails off, their asses off for this New Orleans Saints team, because we are relying on depth in a good bit of areas, right? Depth has to really be a thing for the Saints when you're not super loaded in certain areas like the defensive line. I think our, most well taken care of unit, ironically enough, is the secondary. And y'all have heard me say, damn, this is the first time in a long time that the defense is the highlighter. I'm like, hey, I'm cool with the defense. We remember when the rush defense was number 1 in the NFL, but the pass defense was 31st or 32nd. So it kind of balances you out there. But I'm confident in the defense against the Green Bay Packers. I'm not afraid of this offense. I'm not afraid of Jordan Love. I have a lot of trust in the defensive side of the ball. It really all comes down to those offensive trenches. Derek Carr's play, his chemistry with the receivers. Better use Taysom Hill again. 16-1 in games where he has at least 7 or more carries. That was a loaded back-to-back 2-hour podcast, episode 42 of the NFL with AJL. Let's go ahead and get out of here. That was episode 42 of the NFL with AJL. Y'all could have been anywhere else on a Friday night, tapped in with me for 2 hours and 14 minutes on the show. We talked Deshaun Watson's future. I defended Justin Fields to the grave. JT said there's possibly no excuse, but we came up with the verdict for him. We picked every week 2 game. We talked about Patrick Mahomes' new contract, Deion Sanders possibly not wanting Shedeur to go there, to the draft, and everywhere in between. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like the stream, subscribe on YouTube, share the stream wherever you're possibly at. Get in the comments, get in the chat. Let me know what you enjoyed from the show, what I didn't talk about tonight, what you possibly would have liked to see. And as always, the QR code in the corner of the screen will give you every bit of the NFL with AJL social media content and podcast content. Get at me on social, DM, share, like the post, get in the comments, tell me how I'm horribly wrong. I love all of it. I love the engagement you give me. I'm set to have the best month on YouTube. You guys heard me talking about driving up the subs, driving up the watch hours. I will be able to even give back to you guys in a bigger way, but it would not be possible without the support that you guys give me. Episode 43 coming on Tuesday. It's going to be a packed one as football is back in the house. As always, I love you. I need you. And